Her father sold her for a merger, then paid blackmail to hide a crime. Vivian believed her family was cruel, but she never imagined they were guilty. After she blew up the board meeting, Lucien Esney team uncovered the payments, $200,000 a month from her father, Lourdes Antonio Torres, starting right after Lucien brother was framed. The wedding wasn't just a business deal. It was a cover-up wrapped in white lace. Through the blinding Miami downpour, the camera finds a shattered figure. She sits on the cold stone, her opulent gown now a soaked symbol of betrayal. Hours ago, she was the city's radiant bride until she found her fiancé in bed with her own sister. Her family's only response was a cold demand to secure their corporate merger. It is a brutal lesson sometimes. The hands you trust to protect you are the ones twisting the blade. The tempest is suddenly pierced by a black Rolls-Royce. Lucien Vale, the undisputed architect of the underworld, steps into the rain. He drapes his coat over her trembling shoulders, asking who broke her. Today, you and I are going to watch this tragedy unfold together, because this cycle of vengeance is only just beginning. Fade back 3 hours. The air in Vivian's bridal suite is suffocating. Bridesmaids shift nervously, avoiding her eyes. We have all felt that sudden shift in a room. The quiet instinct warning us the ground is about to collapse. Always trust that feeling. Vivian drifts down the hall looking for her sister, only to open a door and watch her universe fracture. Damien, her fiancé, has his hands twisted in Cassidy's hair. The real tragedy is not the infidelity, it is the horrifying absence of his guilt. Damien lazily adjusts his tie, flashing a toxic smirk, and tells her she is overreacting. It is a painful lesson to believe people when their mask finally slips. She flees into the violent storm, and the cruelest detail of all, not a single person even tried to follow her out. The camera pulls wide. She sits anchored to the freezing marble while the indifferent city roars past. A heavy car door slams, but Vivian barely blinks, paralyzed by the shock of her shattered reality. Slowly, deliberate footsteps cut through the rain. A resonant voice breaks the quiet, warning her about the cold. Exhausted by the control of toxic men, Vivian snaps that she is fine. The stranger simply gestures to her ruined dress and the raging tempest. You see, sometimes the universe shatters your foundation just so you are forced to build a new one. She lifts her chin, locking eyes with a man forged from the dark heart of the Mafia. He is a striking portrait of sharp features, ruthless eyes, and a tailored suit, standing defiant against the downpour. The camera pushes in on his heavy gaze, the kind that demands absolute attention. This is Lucien Vale, the unquestioned architect of the city's crime syndicate. He operates in deep shadows, manipulating power with ruthless precision. Even her arrogant former fiancé spoke his name with hesitation. His quiet presence proves a timeless life rule. True power never has to announce itself. Lucien holds his umbrella steady and speaks her name like an immovable truth. Vivian Mercer, staring up at the most dangerous figure in Miami. She bitterly replies that she traded that name away for nothing. In that exact cinematic moment, a profound shift happens. For one silent second, a flicker of genuine intrigue breaks through the cold, calculated exterior of the underworld king. The Titan steps closer, shifting his umbrella to block the brutal rain. The violent storm is instantly reduced to a muted hum. He asks a simple question, and the emotional dam inside Vivian breaks. She pours out the ugly truth of the betrayal and the manipulation of parents who valued corporate power over her soul. It is a tragic reality that the deepest wounds are often inflicted by family, and sometimes cutting ties is the only path to survival. She glares up, challenging his motives. Lucian's jaw tightens. When he speaks the name Damien Torres, the words sound like a drawn blade. She asks if they are allies, and his denial is absolute frost. Silently, he wraps his heavy coat around her freezing frame. The scent of cedar and raw power surrounds her completely. Lucian looks down, his voice steady as he tells her she cannot remain in the tempest. Vivian offers a broken laugh, revealing the darkest part of her reality. She has no refuge left. Her apartment, her social standing, her financial existence, all tethered to the man who just destroyed her. It is a harsh truth about survival. The moment you hand someone total control over your livelihood, you surrender your freedom. Lucian absorbs this silently, analyzing the invisible cage she is trapped in. Slowly, he offers his hand, stating quietly that she has a destination tonight. Moments later, Vivian sinks into the rich leather of his armored car. Her primal instincts scream at her to flee the predator beside her, but profound emotional exhaustion has completely paralyzed her fear. Inside the silent car, Damien's cruel voice still echoes in her mind. Stick with me here because we have probably both made this mistake. We let toxic people set up camp in our thoughts long after they are gone. You must actively evict them to reclaim your peace. When Vivian asks about their destination, the icy mob boss softens into something surprisingly human. He reveals he is taking her to his private estate. She raises a cynical eyebrow, asking if a merciless crime lord regularly collects broken strays. A ghost of a smile graces his sharp face. He calmly states his assets are untouchable, and she is now under his shield. She fires back that she is not his property. Lucian merely nods. He points out that she belongs to no one now, and that is precisely where her true power begins. The Vale estate transcends simple luxury. It is a modern fortress of glass and blackened steel brooding over the bay, vibrating with untouchable wealth. Vivian walks through the massive entrance, her ruined heels clicking against polished stone. The environment drips with opulence, yet notes how true authority never has to shout. It operates in commanding silence. From the shadows, a fierce housekeeper named Mrs. Kwan materializes. Spotting the soaking bride, she scolds Lucian for bringing a wounded stray into their dangerous world. Lucian never raises his tone. He meets the matriarch's fierce gaze, formally introduces Vivienne, and calmly anchors the new reality. She is under his protection now, and his quiet word is the final law of the house. Mrs. Kwan leads Vivienne to the upper wing, determined to peel away the icy remnants of her trauma. Climbing the sweeping staircase, Vivienne senses the gravity of Lucian's gaze. She pauses, asking the true reason behind his sudden charity. Lucian stands perfectly still in the shadows below. Lightning frames his stoic face as he delivers his motive. Damien Torres dismantled his crime family years prior, and the cosmic scales must be balanced. He fades into the dark. The psychological weight hits Vivian instantly. She is no damsel in distress. She is a finely tuned instrument of Mafia vengeance. Here is a crucial rule for surviving. If a dangerous force hands you the keys to a golden cage, never confuse luxury with genuine freedom. You are simply playing a new, much deadlier game. Let the camera linger on this brilliant cinematic beat. Mrs. Kwan leaves out a set of dark cashmere loungewear. Vivian sheds the saturated wedding gown, letting the ultimate symbol of her betrayal collapse onto the cold marble. She stands beneath, scalding water, physically scrubbing away the psychological stain of Damien's touch until her shivering ceases. Stepping into the quiet room, her phone illuminates the dark. 17 missed calls, her father barking orders, her sister weeping crocodile tears, and her mother lamenting a ruined business deal. Cutting off family requires monumental strength, but your inner peace must be fiercely guarded. But she blocks every contact, severing the toxic roots forever, just as a soft knock brings Mrs. Kwan inside with a steaming plate. Vivian opens the door to find Mrs. Kwan carrying a tray of warm food. The matriarch offers a maternal gaze, commanding her to eat, while noting she finally looks alive again. As the meal thaws the ice in Vivian's chest, she seeks an anchor in the chaos, asking about the housekeeper's history with Lucian. Mrs. Kwan smiles softly, recalling 23 years of loyalty. Back when the boss was merely a reckless boy, Vivian asks if that boy remains. The older woman shakes her head, stating he is utterly lethal now, though a decent man is buried deep within. She confirms the chilling truth: Damien ruined Lucian's legacy. If the kingpin brought her here, the board is already set. It is a stark reminder to never underestimate a mind that has mastered the long game of revenge. Let us unpack this piece by piece together. The camera pushes in as Mrs. Kwan pins Vivian with a stare, stripping away all pretense. She asks if she will remain a passive pawn, or finally flip the board and use the boss right back. The housekeeper makes it clear that Lucian never opens his doors out of pity. Hours later, sleep refuses to come. Vivian lies awake in the dark, her mind trapped in a relentless loop of betrayals. By 2 in the morning, she surrenders. Pulling a heavy sweater around her shoulders, she wanders into the echoing halls of the quiet mansion. She has no destination, only a desperate need to escape the crushing weight of her bloodline. Sometimes, stepping blindly into the terrifying unknown is the exact way to find out where you truly belong. Vivian drifts onto the terrace, the biting chill of the night air crashing against the warmth of the house. There he stands, Lucian, framed as a jagged shadow against the canvas of Miami Bay. He clutches a glass of amber liquor. He carries the inescapable gravity of a syndicate boss. A slow shift of his shoulders is the only sign he registers her presence. His voice is a rough murmur, stripped of corporate polish, as he asks if she managed to sleep. Defiant, Vivian fires back, asking if he ever does. They stand in the quiet, watching the dying storm fade. Life has a brutal way of dragging two shattered souls to the exact same precipice. Here is a simple truth. We often find our truest reflections in those who share our darkest pain. She breathes in the ozone and finally asks the question consuming her. You and I have seen this kind of heartbreak before. Vivian feels the solid ground vanish as the decaying reality of this underworld comes into sharp focus. Lucian speaks, his tone dropping into a lethal register that turns the air to ice. He reveals how someone framed his brother Ethan with falsified papers, stripping away his empire. Damien took it all, but the agonizing dagger comes next. Vivian learns her own father brokered the filthy deal. Her blood sold her out, treating her like a disposable trophy to clean up a monster's reputation. The betrayal hits her like a physical blow, stealing her breath. Remember this crucial lesson. Your true worth is never defined by the toxic people who try to use you as a cheap chip in their games. You alone hold the power to claim your value. The night wraps around them like a heavy coat. Lucian finally lets his iron guard drop. His voice softens into something almost gentle as he tells her he knows her pain, and that is exactly why she is here. The shadowed space between them hums with a frequency deeper than mere revenge. Standing above the sprawling Miami skyline, Vivian should be paralyzed by fear. Instead, a profound calm settles over her trembling frame. She studies the hardened boss, asking if his grand plan is simply to use her to destroy Damien. Lucian admits that was the strategy, until she walked into his life and rewrote the rules. He swears she is safe. She lets out a bitter laugh at the irony of finding shelter with a criminal. But consider this simple truth. Sometimes the darkest, most terrifying places turn out to be the exact sanctuary your weary soul needed. Vivian runs the grim mathematics of her survival. Every road leads off a cliff. Returning to the family that sold her out is impossible, and facing Damien is a death sentence. She confesses that living in his shadow made her forget how to even draw a breath. Lucien holds her steady gaze and simply tells her to stay. When she asks what his protection will cost, his jaw tightens. He states clearly that he does not collect debts from broken people. It is a raw truth that carries a strange comfort. She stares at this dangerous man who just handed her safety with no strings attached. He looks like a tired soldier who has forgotten peace. She whispers, asking why he really stopped for her. The lesson here is clear. The people who demand absolutely nothing from you are usually the ones capable of giving the most. Vivienne is done playing the role of collateral damage. Something fractures in her chest, shattering the lock she forced onto her heart after the betrayal. Moving on instinct, she reaches out. Her trembling fingers brush against Lucien's rough hand. He goes rigid, a man unaccustomed to a gentle touch, yet he does not pull away. She whispers a fragile thank you as thunder echoes across the water. In the wake of the dying storm, a wild spark flares to life inside her. Hope. Taking that first terrifying step into the unknown can paralyze you, but it is the only way to rewrite your destiny. The morning light breaks sharp. She wakes to the aroma of dark coffee, quietly wishing the violence of yesterday was merely a nightmare. But the heavy sweater draped nearby proves otherwise. She is waking up inside the fortress of Lucien Vale. Stick with me here, because the web is tangling.
While Damien tears the city apart, Vivienne
Drifts into the kitchen.
Mrs. Kwan works a knife with terrifying precision.
Nearby, a young man lounges against the marble. He shares Lucien's sharp features but wears a reckless edge. He mocks Vivienne, branding her the runaway bride. Mrs. Kwan snaps at him, and his bitter armor cracks. He reveals he is Ethan, the brother Damien systematically erased. Vivienne's throat tightens, swearing she knew nothing of his ruin. Ethan gives a hollow shrug. That is how Damien operates, burying victims while the world looks away. Always remember this rule. No matter how deep a snake hides its poison, the truth will claw its way out. The tension breaks when a hot plate is slid forward, with orders to eat. Mrs. Kwan mutters about Vivienne's frail frame, forcing her onto a stool. Ethan leans in close, demanding her endgame. He asks if she wants a shield, revenge, or some twisted romance. Will she ruin his brother or get him killed? Vivienne whispers that she is merely trying to survive. Hearing that honest plea, Ethan's armor fractures. He lays out the brutal reality. Lucien is a terrifying force, but his loyalty is absolute. Within these walls, she is untouchable. A dangerous smile creeps across Ethan's face. Lucien has waited 3 agonizing years to strike, and Vivienne just handed him the perfect weapon. Here is a vital lesson. Your strongest allies are often broken people who share your worst enemies. Ethan walks out, leaving the room suffocating in heavy silence. Ethan has been drowning in rage since his trial. Vivienne understands that slow burn. The chopping stops. Mrs. Kwan fixes Vivienne with a sorrowful gaze, asking if she is prepared for the fallout. This is no longer a broken engagement. It is a mafia war. Damien will never let his prize escape, and her family will kill to protect their merger. As for Lucien, the predator has been chained for years, and she just snapped his leash. Heavy footsteps shatter the tension. Lucien strides in wearing a dark suit, radiating lethal authority. His eyes lock onto hers, before dropping a crushing reality. The grace period is over. Damien knows exactly where she is, and he is arriving today. You and I know the hard truth. Running from a toxic fire never extinguishes it. Eventually, you have to plant your feet and face the flames. Lucien leans against the marble, his voice hollow of emotion. He lays out two brutal paths. Option 1 is the ghost protocol. By midnight, he smuggles her out of Miami with a fresh identity. She vanishes forever. Option 2 means bathing the city in fire. She stays as bait to rot Damien's reputation, sabotage his deals, and force a fatal misstep. Then, Lucien will bury the man who shattered his family. The kitchen drops into suffocating silence. The clock ticks like a detonator. Vivian searches his eyes. He offered both escape and apocalyptic vengeance. She whispers a warning that this war will cost lives. Lucien does not blink, stating coldly that blood is the only currency a monster respects. He demands she choose. Listen closely. True power is born the exact second you refuse to let anyone else write your fate. Presses her palms against the marble, fighting sheer panic. Every instinct screams to take the ghost protocol and fade away. But the memory of Damien's arrogant smirk flashes in her mind. It acts like gasoline poured onto her soul. She lifts her chin, locking onto Lucien's gaze. She vows she is done being a helpless pawn or a tragic trophy. If she stays, she becomes a main player in this war. Lucien's eyes flare with terrifying respect, silently sealing their pact. When Damien is ashes, she walks away free. She pulls in a jagged breath and declares she is staying. The room goes dead quiet. Ethan steps into the doorway, stunned. Lucien's mask breaks into a merciless, predatory grin. He whispers that she made the right choice, because Damien just pulled up to the gates. Remember this. Running from your demons only delays the collision. You must dig your heels in and fight. Let us examine this moment together. The sudden chime of the doorbell shatters the silence, echoing like a formal declaration of war. Vivian freezes, her coffee cup trembling as she stares at the frosted glass. Outside, the distorted shadows of heavy enforcers loom. Her abuser, Damien, has arrived. Across the room, Lucien sits in terrifying stillness, offering her one final chance to hide. Yet Vivian does something profound. She sets the cup down, understanding that fleeing from trauma only ensures it chases you forever. Ethan slips into the dark to record the trap. Lucien smooths his suit with predatory grace, instructing her to stay close. It is a powerful reminder for us all. When the ghosts of your past finally knock on your door, you never run. You stand your ground. The atmosphere thickens into something you could cut with a knife. Picture this scene with me. Vivian drags a trembling hand down her borrowed sweater, tilting her chin upward as if bracing for a physical blow. She murmurs to just let it happen, aware that her world has already burned. Lucien offers a ghost of a smile, drifting toward the door with the terrifying grace of a man who knows violence like an old friend. He pulls it wide. Damien Torres fills the frame, shadowed by two massive guards. His gaze snaps to Vivian. Shock flickers across his features before freezing into calculated poison. A honeyed smile spreads as he breathes her name. We must learn from this moment. Never trust the polite warmth of the exact person who just finished tearing your soul into pieces. The camera lingers on Vivian as her past collides with her present. Damien stands in the threshold, demanding a private whisper with the woman whose life he just dismantled. Vivian does not fold into the dark. She steps forward, anchoring herself firmly against Lucien. Damien scrambles to warp the narrative, waving off his betrayal with her sister as a mere misunderstanding. Vivian stops him. Her voice is barely a whisper, yet it shatters his excuses like glass hitting a concrete floor. Remember this harsh reality of life. You must never allow the one who broke your heart to rewrite the history of your trauma. Always trust your own pain. A bead of cold sweat rolls down Damien's temple. His jaw clenches as his hired muscle watches him lose total command of the room. Lucian's voice drops to a lethal register as he orders the man away. That single sentence fractures Damien's fragile pride. He lunges, but Lucian flows into his path with the silent speed of a predator. Panic bleeds into Damien's eyes. He screams about their corporate merger, clinging to the delusion that money can stitch together a mutilated soul. Then Vivian delivers the killing stroke. Holding his gaze, she throws his vile affair with her sister right back at him. In that single exhale, she takes back her crown. This is a vital life lesson. Never let a traitor manipulate you into feeling guilty for walking away from their abuse. Cornered, Damien immediately plays the bleeding victim, accusing her of running into the arms of his greatest rival. A jagged laugh tears from Damien's throat as he tries to plant seeds of doubt. He mocks her need for a safe harbor, spitting that Lucian only sees her as a disposable pawn. Vivian refuses to flinch. She stares right through him, declaring that being a pawn is infinitely better than being butchered by the man who swore to keep her safe. The words strike him like a heavy fist. His face burns red with fury as he screams about a $40 million deal, pretending cash can glue a ruined heart back together. Vivian calmly states she is finished being traded like an asset. Keep this lesson close. Your quiet peace will always be worth more than a toxic empire. Staring in shock, Damien spits out one final 24-hour warning. Lucian offers a lethal smile, softly advising Damien to walk away before the damage becomes permanent. Stick with me here, because you can practically taste the metallic tang of violence over those marble steps. Damien finally sees the grave yawning at his feet. He steps back, hissing a promise that their war has only just begun. Vivian stares into the void and whispers that it is already over. The sedan speeds off into the night. But watch closely the absolute second that heavy door clicks. Shut. The illusion shatters. Vivian slides down the wall, her frame shaking violently as the adrenaline leaves her blood. This reveals a beautiful truth. Real courage is never the total absence of terror. It is simply choosing to stand your ground even when your soul is trembling. Before her knees strike the floor, Lucian catches her. His deep voice acts as an anchor, commanding her to breathe. The adrenaline washes away, leaving a crushing exhaustion. As she looks up, the shadows trace a jagged scar along his jaw, a haunting reminder that he was forged in genuine bloodshed. Guilt creeps into her chest, terrified that innocent lives will bleed for her broken heart. Yet Lucian stands steady. He quietly confesses he has been dismantling Damien's empire in the dark for 3 years. He offers her a flight out of the city, free of judgment. Remember this truth. True bravery is choosing the battlefield even when the escape door is held wide open. Vivian pushes herself upright, rejecting the easy exit, and swears to watch this war burn to its bitter end. The housekeeper eases Vivian onto the leather sofa, pressing warm tea into her trembling hands. By the window, Lucian's silhouette cuts a dark shape against the night. He warns that Damien is probably calling her father right now, moving to freeze her accounts and destroy her name. Vivian closes her eyes. "Let them," she whispers. Lucian cautions that his rivals will now hunt him just to watch her suffer. Vivian slowly lowers her tea. When she opens her eyes, a terrifying, beautiful new fire is burning in her irises. She coldly suggests they just make the enemy bleed first. Carry this life lesson with you. You will only meet your absolute strongest self when someone tries to burn your world to ash. Ethan leans against the doorframe, laughing softly at the descending chaos. Ethan chuckles, suggesting they keep Vivian around. In their treacherous world, genuine loyalty is a rare diamond. He sinks into the couch, asking his brother if they are playing defense tonight or going straight for the jugular. Lucian answers by dialing his ghost contact. His voice is ice as he demands every buried file on the Torres merger. He wants the offshore accounts, the shadow investors, and decades of financial sins. Vivian sits paralyzed. Lucian isn't just throwing a punch, he is designing a killing stroke. He reveals that Damien's empire is hollow, propped up entirely by a fraudulent real estate scam. Keep this profound truth in your heart. The taller they stack their monument of lies, the more beautifully it shatters when you finally kick the table out from under it. You and I are about to witness the exact moment a survivor becomes a warrior. Vivian asks a question that changes everything. Will exposing this fraud annihilate her own family's legacy too? Lucian stares into her soul and softly confirms it will. The profound shift happens. Her hands finally stop shaking. She commands them to burn it all down. Ethan breaks into a predatory grin. Lucian steps closer, asking if she is truly ready for the fallout. Vivian's reply is made of winter frost. Her own flesh and blood traded her away to secure a profit margin, so she is ready to strike the match herself. Never underestimate the terrifying power of a broken heart that refuses to play the victim anymore. A dark spark of respect ignites in Lucian's eyes as they lock the study doors. When the files hit the servers, the evidence is devastating. Let's look at this together. Vivian flips through physical records while the brothers tear into the drives. Every ledger is another nail hammered into Damien's future. The knife twists with agonizing precision when Vivian recognizes her father's signature on the illegal contracts. Her family sold out their heritage in broad daylight. Lucian explains the tragic reality of the elite. They hide their worst sins in the open, banking on society's willingness to look away. Suddenly, Ethan gasps. He found proof that Damien has been quietly siphoning millions from his own ruthless father. The life lesson here is unavoidable. Arrogant greed always leaves a paper trail, and karma keeps every single receipt. Lucian watches the offshore transfers illuminate the monitors, a cold satisfaction reflecting in his eyes. Greed and stupidity mix into a deadly cocktail, he whispers. Vivian steps beside him, demanding to see the shape of their revenge. Lucian isn't just disrupting a merger. He intends to sever the bloodline connecting Damien to his dangerous father. Once that patriarch discovers his son has been draining the vault, the vengeance will be biblical. As they map out this ruin, Vivian's phone buzzes. Her mother is pleading for her to come home, claiming the family is paralyzed with terror. Vivian stares at the screen, then deletes the message without a flinch. Hold on to this vital truth. Sometimes, the only way to heal a deep wound is to stop answering the door when the knife knocks. The weight of betrayal rarely sleeps. Vivian's phone flares to life, exposing a text from Cassidy. The sister who dismantled her life is begging for a conversation. Vivian's features harden into marble. She blocks the number, whispering that actions carry heavy prices. Walking away from a poisonous bloodline is the agonizing, yet necessary step toward finding peace. Seconds later, an unknown number delivers a raw, violent threat. Lucian scans the text, and the temperature plummets. He offers a hollow smile, noting that desperation breeds fatal mistakes. He instantly assigns an operative to act as Vivian's unseen shadow. She resists, but he understands the dark reality of this underworld. Men losing their grip on power are always the most dangerous animals in the room. Lucian cuts her protest short, his voice an immovable wall in the dimly lit room. He holds her gaze, declaring that under his roof, her safety is his sole burden. In any other tragedy, such possessiveness would be a warning. Yet for Vivian, his shadow feels like an impenetrable fortress. Across the heavy mahogany desk, Ethan tries to slice the suffocating tension with a dry joke, his fingers flying across intercepted servers. Lucian does not smile, commanding him only to trace the money. We must remember a simple truth here. No matter how meticulously a monster operates, corruption always leaves a paper trail if someone is brave enough to hunt. Houses bleed away in that quiet study as they forge a weaponized case against Damien. Then the silence shatters. Her phone vibrates on the wood. It is her father, the very architect of her lifelong misery. Lucian watches her from the shadows, murmuring that the board is finally hers to play. Vivian's trembling hand hits the speaker button. Her father's freezing tone instantly pollutes the warm air of the study, demanding she return. She refuses him completely, shifting his cruel tactics. The patriarch weaponizes her guilt, attacking her for the public shame of hiding with a rival. In that breathless frame, the heavy dam inside Vivian breaks. She screams that he treated her like empty real estate, auctioning his own flesh and blood to a monster. The old man plays the wounded victim, insisting he only wanted to secure her future. But she sees the naked truth. He watered his own empire using her tears. Hold on to this lesson. If someone only values you for how you elevate their status, their love is a total illusion. Vivian paces the hardwood floor, consumed by pure rage. She brutally tears away the family fiction, her voice echoing off the walls. She screams that he only ever cared about merging two golden empires, entirely blind to the monster Damien was. Her father barks a harsh order to lower her voice. She refuses, laying out the devastating facts. Damien had been sleuthed with her sister for months. The most agonizing twist of this tragedy? Her parents knew all along. The suffocating silence on the line confirms her absolute worst nightmare. Her father casually dismisses the betrayal as a brief distraction, insisting the family business come first. Vivian releases a hollow, broken laugh. She tells him to find another pawn to sacrifice because she is leaving the board forever. He threatens to erase her from the bloodline and sever her funds. Never forget this truth. When people prove they value money over your breaking heart, believe them. You and I have likely stood on a terrifying edge like this one. That brutal threat was engineered to break her spirit, but it shatters her chains instead. She locks eyes with Lucian, whose knuckles are bone white against his desk. She tells her father to keep every single cent, declaring she would rather be broke and breathing than rich and suffocating. The patriarch delivers a cold warning about her massive mistake. She counters with a verbal strike that cuts straight to the bone. Her only mistake, she whispers, was believing he loved her more than his bank accounts. She kills the call, dropping the phone as if it caught fire. Ethan releases a low whistle, staring at the ash of her burnt bridges. Vivian suddenly bursts into a wild, breathless laugh. Reclaiming your independence is absolutely terrifying, but the fierce freedom is always worth the painful fall. Vivian catches her breath, her shoulders dropping as she confesses she is not okay, yet the raw freedom outweighs the grief. Lucian closes the distance, standing before her like an unyielding shield. He studies her tired eyes and softly corrects her. She is not broke, he promises, because his wealth is limitless. He frames this not as charity, but as a calculated act of total war. Her family expects her to crawl back when the accounts dry up, so they will starve those expectations. Vivian looks up at this dangerous man, asking why he would risk his empire for her. His rigid posture softens, revealing a hidden scar. Nobody reached a hand down when he was drowning in the dark. Life demands this grace. Helping someone else survive the exact machinery that once broke you is the truest form of strength a person can ever possess. Before she can process his tragic confession, Ethan's monitors chime loudly, echoing through the room like a funeral bell. The hacker's face drains of color in the pale blue light as he announces a catastrophic shift. He pulls up a freshly intercepted message from Damien. Her vicious ex has just triggered an emergency board meeting, summoning all the top investors. The true horror is buried right in the subject line. It calls for an urgent review of Vivian's mental stability. Her blood turns to absolute ice. Damien is preparing to gaslight the entire corporation, painting her as mentally unstable to force the merger through. Even worse, her father will play the tragic, concerned parent. Ethan keeps scrolling, his voice laced with heavy dread as he warns that the trap goes much deeper. Always read the fine print in life. The most lethal poison is usually buried quietly in the smallest details. Consider the sheer, calculated cruelty of this strategy. Damien is bringing a bribed psychiatrist to the board, paying them to testify that Vivian is losing her grip on reality. Lucian coldly breaks down the enemy's endgame. Once that fake diagnosis enters the permanent corporate record, her credibility is erased forever. Panic rises sharply in Vivian's chest, tightening her breath. She realizes these men are trying to rewrite her identity just to secure their massive wealth. Never let anyone else hold the pen to your own life story. Trembling, she asks how they can possibly fight a machine that massive. Lucian does not even blink. He dials his fixer, ordering the most merciless corporate lawyer money can buy. Turning back to her with a dark, predatory smile, he maps out the counterattack. They are going to march directly into that boardroom and drop hard evidence to reduce Damien's legacy to ash. Payback time is finally here. Lucian seamlessly steps into the role of a general. He tells her she will stand before those investors and expose every dirty secret on the official record. Vivian trembles, terrified these titans will destroy her. Lucian steps closer, extinguishing that fear. He promises they will fail, because he will stand beside her with overwhelming legal power. If they question her sanity for leaving a monster, he states, we will question theirs for expecting her to stay. This is the exact moment Vivian transcends her trauma. The panic melts into a cold, concentrated rage. She looks at Lucian and declares she no longer wants to just expose Damien. She wants his empire in ashes. Finding people who water your courage instead of your fear is everything in life. Lucian warns her to rest, but as she turns, Ethan shouts her name in pure panic. What else is hiding in the dark? Let us pause and look at the shifting dynamics in this room together. Ethan stares at Vivian with a heavy mix of deep respect and sheer terror. He points out that she is the first person to ever draw a hard line against a ruthless predator like Damien. But Ethan is visibly sweating, quietly begging her not to let this dark corporate war swallow her gentle soul. Vivian maintains a cool mask in the study, but the second she escapes to the isolation of her bedroom, reality violently caves in, her breathing fractures. This is no longer just fighting a toxic ex. She is declaring total, irreversible war on her own traumatic history. Tomorrow, she must obliterate every single person who ever made her feel small. There is a hard, unavoidable truth we all must carry. Sometimes you literally have to burn down the quiet, obedient version of yourself to finally take the pen and write your own story. The heavy bedroom door clicks open. It is Lucian. Vivian does not flinch, having already memorized the protective cadence of his footsteps. He leans against the doorframe, asking quietly if the ghosts of her past are keeping her awake. She hugs her arms, confessing the dread eating at her before the morning confrontation. Under the dim lamps, Lucian looks less like a ruthless enforcer and more like a weary man who intimately understands pain, but he refuses to sugarcoat their grim reality. He warns that Damien will drag this fight into the gutter. They will hurl mud at her name just to break her spirit. Vivian wants soft comfort, but Lucian hands her a sword instead. He tells her to stop expecting monsters to play fair. Expect a war, he whispers, and swing back twice as hard. It is a vital lesson. You cannot expect toxic people to honor the rules of a fair fight just because your heart is in the right place. Let us look at this frame together. The harsh light cuts across Lucian's face as he locks onto Vivian's trembling gaze, stripping away her final illusions. He whispers that she is not walking into that room to beg, but to burn their greedy world to ash. A dormant fire flickers in her chest, though she confesses the sheer terror paralyzing her. Lucian leans in, shadows clinging to his broad shoulders. Fear, he murmurs, is a profound gift, keeping the blade of survival painfully sharp. When she asks why he cares, the heavy iron of his posture crumbles. He knows the agonizing weight of being forged into a weapon rather than a man. The most brutally broken souls always bleed the hardest to shield others from that exact same dark fate. The camera lingers on the suffocating stillness as Lucian finally lets his iron defenses shatter. He is entirely exhausted, sick of watching the innocent become collateral damage. When Vivian desperately tries to shoulder the blame, whispering that she should have seen the twisted red flags, Lucian cuts her off with a rough rumble. She was trapped in an abuser's oldest trick. The lighting dims as he opens the vault of his own agony. For 15 years, he watched his father slowly dismantle his mother. While the world blamed her, she died swallowing those venomous lies. You can hear the raw trauma in his chest as he vows never to let that happen again. Never let a toxic soul rewrite your reality or convince you their darkness is your burden to carry. The unspoken words hang in the air, thick and electric. Vivian understands the absolute danger of this precise second. Falling for a shadow-drenched boss is a fatal gamble. Yet, instead of pulling away, she leans into his warmth. Then, the fragile spell violently shatters. His phone vibrates with an angry buzz. The south gate is breached. In a heartbeat, the tender man evaporates, replaced by a cold-blooded killer. Moving like a phantom, he orders her to lock the heavy door and let no one inside. Left alone, the crushing silence becomes deafening, broken only when her screen lights up with an unknown number. When you finally cut a toxic presence from your life, they will endlessly claw at the glass to get back inside. You must turn the lock and walk away forever. The text on her screen drips with venom. Come back, or else. The camera tracks her trembling hands as the reality of her ex's obsession sinks in. She reaches to call Lucian, but the house suddenly erupts. Wood splinters violently, and jagged glass rains across the floor. Creeping toward the door, she catches the chilling cadence of Lucian speaking rapid, lethal Korean. It is the hollow voice of a man who deals in death. Her phone rings again. It is him, his tone terrifyingly calm despite the muffled violence echoing behind him. A hit squad is here. He orders her to stay hidden. Her survival instincts scream at her to vanish. But right here, in the shadows, something inside her permanently shifts. Hiding might buy a few quiet minutes, but eventually you must stand up and face the monsters head on. Her fingers close tightly around the freezing marble of a heavy desk bookend. It is a desperate weapon, but she steps out of the room anyway. The camera pans down the staircase, revealing a scene that unfolds like a twisted Baroque painting. 3 trained killers are forced onto their knees, pinned down by Lucian's loyal crew. Ethan leans in the dimly lit corner, casually recording the demise, while the housekeeper tightly grips a massive kitchen knife. In the dead center of the wreckage stands Lucian. The cold steel of his weapon is pressed relentless against the lead killer's temple. He softly gives the trembling man exactly 5 seconds to offer one good reason not to pull the trigger. Never underestimate the quiet people who stand by your side, because they will absolutely go to war to protect you. Let us pause and study this frame together. This is a cinematic masterclass in absolute control. The bleeding thug tries to play tough, demanding the stolen files with loud threats of espionage. Lucian does not even flinch. He stands as an impenetrable wall of glacial ice, softly explaining that the files were legally obtained. The temperature in the room drops to freezing. Lucian leans in close and breathes the thug's real name. He clinically recites the man's tragic failures. A disgraced soldier doing dirty work for mere pennies. If he vanishes tonight, not a single soul will come looking. The color completely drains from the killer's bruised face. True power never needs to scream to command the room, and knowing your enemy's deepest secrets will always grant you the ultimate victory. Do we understand each other? Lucian whispers, and the terrified killers nod before being dragged out. The heavy door slams shut. Lucian drops his arm, the lethal tension draining away, until he catches a shadow on the stairs. It is Vivian, her knuckles stark white around a heavy stone. Instantly, the ice-cold boss completely unravels. Raw panic rips through his chest. He closes the distance in 3 strides, his voice cracking as he yells at her for stepping into the crossfire. Vivian anchors her feet. She refuses to cower in the dark, while he catches a bullet meant for her. He stares at her, entirely disarmed, and whispers that she is insane. She fires right back that he is broken too. The most indestructible bonds are forged in the devastating fire of risking absolutely everything for another soul. He mutters that his life is expendable anyway. That bitter word hits Vivian like a physical blow. She marches down the remaining steps, commanding him never to say that again. Her voice trembles as she lists the fragile people who rely on him, her words catching as the adrenaline fades. The shattered hallway goes entirely silent. 2 profoundly broken people breathing the same air after a brush with death. She whispers the terrifying truth. He is not expendable to her. Lucian slowly raises his hand, his calloused fingers cupping her face with a heartbreaking gentleness that ruins his ruthless facade. He warns her that stepping over this line is a fatal mistake, but Vivian leans into his palm. Playing it safe might keep your heart beating, but taking a massive leap is the only way to actually feel alive. The emotional dam inside her shatters. She admits she has wasted her life shrinking into corners, bleeding for a toxic family, and playing the perfect partner for a coward. The camera captures the raw fire in her eyes. She is done being a disposable piece on someone else's board. When Lucian softly asks who she actually wants to be, she looks into his damaged soul and says she wants to figure it out standing next to him. Every iron wall around Lucian collapses. Vivian kisses him before the fear can stop her. He freezes. Then something feral snaps inside his chest. He pulls her flush against him, his fingers twisting fiercely into her hair. It is chaotic, starving, and drenched in agonizing loneliness. Walking away from the chains of your past is the only way to discover who is truly meant to hold you in the dark. Let us pause and look at this destructive frame together. The suffocating isolation they have carried for an eternity detonates in a single embrace. Vivian anchors herself to him like a drowning victim, grounding her pulse against the tension of his shoulders. When they break for air, Lucian rests his forehead against hers. He murmurs that this crosses a bloody boundary they can never uncross. And Vivienne, she softly whispers that she wants the entire world to burn. He warns her that Damien will interpret this as a declaration of war, a path demanding everything she has left. Yet, instead of dread, a fierce exhilaration blooms within her ribs. The most terrifying leaps into the unknown are often the exact choices that will finally shatter your cage. She stares directly into the eyes of a killer and swears she has never been more certain. You and I can almost hear the heavy gears of survival grinding inside his mind. He forcefully withdraws, dragging the freezing mask of the boss back over his features. He gruffly commands her to rest before their war begins at dawn. Vivian fires back a sarcastic bite, and the impossible ghost of a smile haunts his mouth. He mocks her for charging armed men with office decor, which she waves away. Alone in her room, the adrenaline completely evaporates. She slides down the mahogany door, gasping as she confronts the catastrophic storm she just welcomed inside. Yet, she would do it all again. Claiming your own chaotic destiny will always conquer surviving as a hollow puppet on a string. Vivian chose this path because her battered intuition finally screamed for life. Following a dead sleep, daylight crashes in like a speeding train. Mrs. Kwan roughly shakes her awake, forcing bitter coffee into her palms with a motherly threat. The scalding shower purges the gunpowder and the haunting heat of that desperate kiss. Stepping into a razor-sharp charcoal suit, Vivienne confronts the mirror. The reflection is a gorgeous stranger. This woman is armored, cold, and entirely untouchable. Below, the dining room has transformed into a literal war room, vibrating with hackers and shadow operatives. It is a vital lesson for the wounded. Forging your own armor and standing tall is the greatest victory when marching to ruin those who try to bury you. Step into this room with me for a heartbeat. Feel the absolute zero chill hanging in the air. Lucian stands by the table in a black suit tailored sharply enough to draw blood. He radiates the quiet violence of a hostile takeover. As Vivian glides in, his jaw is granite, though his dark eyes remember the naked vulnerability of midnight. He gestures to his legal mercenaries, Rachel Kim, a smiling corporate shark, and David Chen, the silent executioner. Rachel holds Vivian's gaze with a predator's grin, vowing to gut Damien with massive fraud charges. David swears to suffocate any media whispers, painting Vivian as insane. Learn this brutal truth. When traitors attempt to burn your reputation, never go to war alone. Find the absolute monsters who will fiercely protect your throne. David clarifies that Damien's paid doctor has zero legal right to diagnose her. His opinions are just expensive dirt. Yet, observe the microscopic tremble in Vivian's hands. Her terror is a physical weight, dreading that these rumors will bury her. From the shadows, Marcus steps into the light. A scarred veteran, he advises her to let the cowards gossip. They will violently flip the narrative, unmasking Damien as an obsessive tyrant who fabricated her collapse to hide his own treason. Vivian whispers that the fallout will be hideous. Lucian's voice drops to a freezing murmur. It is already hideous, he says. They are simply turning on the floodlights. Here is a profound lesson. walking straight into the mouth of your worst nightmares, completely destroys their power to rule you. Rachel steps back into the shadows, her quiet nod signaling the hour has arrived. This is no longer a desperate plea for approval. Vivian simply needs to prove her sanity and end this game. The final rule is whispered into the heavy air. Do not let Damien pull the strings of her emotions. Vivian nods, though her chest heaves with a trapped, frantic pulse. As the convoy is called, Lucian claims the dark leather seat beside her. They slide into the humid Miami traffic, massive black vehicles prowling the concrete like sharks catching the scent of blood. In the dim silence, Vivian confesses her absolute terror. Lucian's subtle smirk catches the passing streetlights. He tells her fear is a profound gift. Never let the world convince you that being afraid makes you weak. Fear is merely your soul alarm bell, demanding you stay awake and survive the impending tragedy. Lucian's voice is a low rumble, warning her not to let terror make her small. She must enter that room as an equal, not a sacrificial lamb. When her breath catches, he brushes his fingers against her trembling hand. The brief contact anchors her to the earth. At the towering glass monument of her betrayed, his name carved in arrogant steel. Riding to the 15th floor feels like a descent into the underworld, where lives are shattered with a single signature. Her legal squad flanks her like armor. Lucian walks exactly one step behind her, acting as a protective shadow. Notice the profound beauty in this frame. True loyalty does not mean fighting a war on someone else's behalf. It means standing right behind them in the dark, breathing raw courage into their spine so they can strike the final blow. The camera catches the receptionist's color draining as the expression sweeps past. She scrambles to stall, but Lucian shoots her a hollow stare that freezes the air in her lungs. The heavy oak doors swing wide, revealing the waiting wolves. Vivian's exhausted father, Damien's venomous patriarch, and the cheating groom. Damien leans back with a smug grin, but the moment he processes Vivian's legal squad, his mask crumbles into dust. The lens captures his absolute panic before he desperately reconstructs his false confidence. He forces a laugh, claiming he is relieved she finally found her senses. Vivian simply holds his gaze, her voice dropping to a freezing whisper as she denies him. This scene offers a brutal truth. Never mistake a person's silence for submission. More often than not, they are simply taking the quiet time to build an unstoppable army in the dark. You and I have watched this exact tragedy unfold before. Vivian slams her bag onto the polished mahogany, a thunderous crack signaling the end of their reign. Damien's father attempts a sickeningly sweet tone, whispering his concern for a fragile mental state. It is a fatal miscalculation. Vivian slashes through his words. She forces the room to look at the ugly truth, stating that finding her groom in bed with her own sister is not a mental break. It is the only sane reaction to a catastrophic betrayal. Damien stammers, his hands shaking as he begs to keep this a private family matter. Vivian's eyes go hollow, firing back that privacy died the minute they tried to bury her in a psychological grave. The lesson here echoes through the glass walls. When toxic people try to drown you in manufactured shame, the loud, unapologetic truth becomes your most lethal blade. Vivian is not merely burning a bridge today, she is salting the earth so nothing can ever grow here again. She pivots away from a broken heart and steps into cold, calculated vengeance. She recites Damien's hidden sins, the offshore accounts, the stolen funds. Damien's father snaps to attention, the smugness bleeding from his wrinkled face. When Damien screams that she is insane, Rachel slowly slides a mountain of folders across the table. The heavy thud of bank transfers and fake invoices sounds like a judge's gavel. A paper trail leading straight to federal prison. Damien turns the color of ash. When he desperately accuses them of theft, Rachel just smiles, offering to dial the authorities right now. Here is a devastating lesson. If you intend to throw jagged stones at another person, you must be absolutely certain you do not live inside a fragile glass house. The camera lingers on Damien as his universe turns to ash. He stutters out pathetic, trembling excuses, but it is his own father who delivers the fatal blow. The older man's voice is devoid of paternal warmth as he outlines how his son stole from their flesh and blood. Damien pleads that he was just growing the empire, but the absolute disgust in his father's eyes, his Shakespearean Vivian, remains utterly still, absorbing the heavy justice. Desperate, Vivian's own father steps in, begging to save the corporate merger for the shareholders. Vivian slowly turns her gaze to the man who raised her. She produces the very legal document he used to trap her. By formally withdrawing her consent, the empire crumbles. The lesson is steeped in beautiful irony. The heavy iron cage someone builds to break your spirit might just hold the exact key to your absolute freedom. Let the lens pull back and capture the absolute devastation in this room. Vivian's finger traces the fine print, revealing the loophole allowing her to abandon the altar 48 hours prior. Rachel's dark smile confirms the legal trap is flawless. Notice the way Vivian's father shakes, his face turning a violent purple as he screams about his ruined legacy. Her response is a masterclass in detached grief. She will not bind her soul to a parasite just to fund his hollow kingdom. Antonio stares at his deceitful son with cold finality, casting him out before Damien slinks toward the doors. The investors, sensing the profound rot, snap their leather cases shut and vanish. You and I have witnessed this tragedy before. You simply cannot build a lasting monument on a foundation of deceit. One breath of honest wind is all it takes to bring it crashing down. The room empties, leaving behind the chilling silence of a desecrated tomb. Only Vivian's loyal circle, her treacherous father, and Antonio Torres remain. Antonio studies her rigid posture with grim respect, warning her she has just painted a target on her back. Notice how she does not even blink. She calmly informs him the wolves were already at her door. She just finally stopped opening it for them. Antonio nods, stepping away, left alone with the father who sold her. He stares at the empty chairs where $40 million evaporated. He attempts to weaponize her guilt one last time. Vivian severs the final emotional cord. She whispers that he murdered his family the second he put a price tag on his own child. Look deeply at this victory. Never let anyone negotiate your fundamental worth, especially your own blood. She walks out without a single regret. Vivian casts one final look at the man who was supposed to protect her, stating she is leaving with her dignity, a virtue he could never afford. She sweeps out of the glass prison like a violent storm. The descent in the elevator is thick with adrenaline. Rachel's laughter echoes as she recalls the terror on Antonio's face. Marcus quietly taps his phone, releasing the encrypted files to the hungry press. The world is about to catch fire. Vivian presses her forehead against the freezing steel, asking in a fragile whisper if survival is always this chaotic. Rachel's eyes soften with tragic understanding. It is only chaos when you war against those who deserve to fall. Listen to this heavy lesson. Standing up to the people who broke you is the most terrifying, essential thing you will ever do. Down in the concrete garage, Yen stands rigid, waiting for the dark. The all clear cuts through the damp air and the group scrambles into the idling cars. Watch how Vivian's posture completely shatters. She collapses into the leather, her trembling shoulder finding rest against Lucian. You and I know that exact kind of hollow, bone-deep exhaustion. When he asks if she is all right, she only shakes her head, silently begging for peace. His fingers wrap around hers in a desperate oath. But the tragic relief shatters instantly. Jin's voice cracks from the front. They are being hunted. A heavy black sedan mimics their every desperate swerve through the rain-slicked Miami streets. Lucian's body turns to stone. He knows the grim reality of this chase. This is not a covert tale. It is a psychological weapon meant to paralyze her. Remember this terrifying truth. The moment you find the bravery to push back against the darkness, it will invariably try to drag you back down. Pure terror bleeds back into Vivian's eyes, but Lucian's voice remains a steady rumble, promising her they are too exposed for an execution. Even so, the camera catches the cold, metallic gleam of the weapon resting against his ribs. He barks an order, forcing the vehicle to violently dive into the blinding lights of a subterranean garage. They sit in suffocating silence, and until the predatory sedan glides blindly past. High above the city, their safe house feels like a fragile cage. The crew immediately goes to war with the files. Vivian stands alone by the window, her reflection ghost-like against the glittering Miami skyline. She actually pulled the trigger on her arranged life. Keep this human lesson close. Sometimes, you must be the one to strike the match and burn your own toxic history to the ground, just so the glowing embers can finally show you the way out. She murdered the corrupt alliance, yet instead of victory, a suffocating wave of nausea takes hold. Across the dim room, Lucian raises his phone. The camera watches the blood drain from his hardened face, leaving a terrifying mask of pure rage. He severs the call, and the silence becomes a physical weight. That shadow hunting them? It belonged to her own father's private security. The man whose blood runs in her veins is actively orchestrating her demise. The tragedy twists the knife deeper. Marcus decodes the hidden ledgers, projecting a massive trail of blood money flowing directly between her father and the Torres family. The betrayal is absolute and irreversible. You and I must eventually look this devastating horror in the face. The deadliest monsters in our lives rarely hide in the shadows. They are usually the ones smiling warmly at us across our own family dinner tables. The numbers on the screen are staggering. $200,000 bleeding from her father's accounts every month. Rachel leans over the table, calling it what it is: pure blackmail. Vivian desperately tries to deny it, but the receipts tell a flawless story. Then Lucian delivers the killing blow. Marcus traced those payments. They started 2 weeks after Ethan was arrested. Ethan stops pacing, his face freezing in shock. Vivian's father was the silent architect of his ruin, handing Ethan to the wolves to secure his contracts. Understand this fundamental rule of human nature. Deception always leaves a trail in the dark, no matter how much wealth you spend trying to erase it. The truth hits Vivian so violently, her legs surrender, forcing her to grip the windowsill. Vivian whispers, "It must be a mistake." But the truth is taking root. Every memory twists into something manipulative. She recalls her father forcing that toxic merger, his panic when she tried to walk away. He was never protecting a family legacy. He was simply buying his life back from the underworld. Lucian reaches out, but Vivian recoils, sickened by the rot within her bloodline. She locks herself in the dark bathroom, collapsing onto the tile. We all reach that defining breaking point where the only genuine way forward is to let yourself fall apart. She weeps until the grief hollows her out, leaving only freezing rage. A soft knock echoes. Lucian slides down the wall outside her door. He offers no empty sympathy, merely sharing the heavy silence of a moment when every word falls short. Let us analyze this heavy moment together. Vivian looks up, whispering that her existence was built on a lie, but Lucian refuses to let her drown. His voice becomes a grounding force. The fraud belongs solely to her father, a man who ruined Ethan and tried to sell his daughter to cover his bloody footprints. Vivian hates herself for missing the signs, sitting at elegant dinners while monsters brokered deals in the shadows. Lucian stops her spiral. Expecting love from a parent does not make you a fool, he reminds her. It simply makes you human. He admits he wants her father's empire to burn, but he refuses to let those flames touch her. We cannot control the terrible sins of the people who raised us, but we can always choose how we rise above the wreckage they leave behind. The hardened edges of Lucian's persona soften for a passing second, a rare crack in his armor. He looks at Vivian and speaks the truth. Anyone else would have folded under the psychological weight of this nightmare, but she is still fighting the current. Grappling with her father's crimes, she asks for their next move. Lucian extends his hand, promising to drag every dirty secret into the unforgiving light. He vows that Antonio and her father will fall, asking if she wants to be there when the pillars collapse. She tells him she wants to watch them burn. Remember this simple truth. Sometimes vengeance is just justice wearing a darker suit. But just as their momentum peaks, Rachel shatters the room's atmosphere. Antonio just hit Lucian with a brutal restraining order. You and I must appreciate the audacity of this legal maneuver. The hearing is tomorrow before Judge Morrison, whose gavel Antonio bought years ago. Rachel paces the room, calling it a calculated tactic to bury the evidence. David warns that if the judge signs the order, extending the conspiracy puts them behind bars. Ethan vibrates with helpless rage, but in the corner, Marcus lets out a quiet, dangerous laugh. He taps his screen, revealing a beautiful twist. Chen, the brutal enforcer who attacked them, is Antonio's nephew. Marcus recovered the emails. Years of digital footprints prove Chen manages the entire blackmail operation. The lesson here is deeply poetic. The secrets corrupt men use to build their fragile empires are always the exact weapons that tear them down. Step into the shadows of this room and watch the power shift. Vivian is dizzy, stunned by the scale of the hidden empire they unearthed. Marcus leans back, revealing that Chen's digital fortress was breached half-year ago. Every drop of blood money sits in plain sight. Ethan burns with fury, demanding they lock Chen away. But Lucian operates differently. His cold eyes lock onto the screen, a general mapping a massacre. He speaks with quiet authority. They are not relying on a broken justice system. They are detonating this information tonight, flooding the press before Antonio can blink. Rachel casts a sorrowful glance at Vivian, knowing this move erases her father. It reminds us of a simple, brutal truth. Sometimes, to cleanse a deep corruption, you must burn the house down. Rachel warns Vivian that this is a complete financial execution. There is no unburning the bridge, but Vivian's mind is locked on her father's arrogant smile, his lack of remorse as he crushed innocent people to build his gilded cage. Her face hardens into marble. She issues the command without a tremor. Marcus strikes the keyboard, sending dirty secrets straight to federal agents and journalists. A suffocating silence swallows the room. Across the city, untouchable men will soon watch their empires turn to dust. Vivian feels a terrifying calm, yet Rachel knows better, whispering that cornered predators always strike hardest. Right on cue, Lucian's secure phone shatters the quiet with a screaming alarm. It teaches us a vital lesson. The moment you corner a monster, you force it to bare its teeth. Vivian demands answers as the alarm screams. Lucian's cold eyes are as wild with panic. The estate walls are breached, leaving only his brother Ethan and Mrs. Kwan inside. The room erupts into violent motion. Steel slides as weapons are racked, and they sprint to the garage. Jin pushes the armored vehicle to its breaking point, tearing through the night. Lucian barks commands into the radio, trying to outrun fate. Vivian clings to the door handle, praying to a universe she barely trusts. The tires scream up the driveway, revealing a quiet that feels entirely wrong. Headlights wash over the front steps, and the terrifying reality sets in. The heavy doors are shattered, and fresh blood paints the white marble. It is a harsh reminder that our safest sanctuaries are often the most fragile. The vehicle is still moving when Lucian throws his door open, charging up the steps, weapon raised. He is ready for war. Rachel pulls Vivienne down, ordering her to stay out of the crossfire. 2 gunshots shatter the humid air. Waiting in the dark is its own unique, agonizing torture. Vivienne rips herself free, running blindly inside. The foyer is a landscape of destruction. Antiques are splinters, and glass sparkles across the marble. In the center sits Mrs. Kwan, bleeding heavily. But it is the limp boy in her arms that makes the world stop spinning. Ethan. Lucian collapses to the floor, his hands frantically pressing into his brother's chest, his broken voice screaming for help. And sometimes, the heaviest burdens we carry are the ones we place on the shoulders of the innocent. Mrs. Kwan weeps, her voice fracturing as she describes the ambush. 3 men came for blood, and Ethan fought them like a cornered lion to buy her time, but they made him pay the ultimate toll. Lucian, the cold architect of the underworld, unravels. His hands shake as they grip his brother, begging him to keep his eyes open. Ethan is rapidly fading, yet he finds the strength to weakly squeeze his brother's hand. He whispers that it is not his fault. That fractures Lucian. Entirely he sobs, screaming for his brother to stay with him. Flashing red ambulance lights flood the wreckage as medics pull Lucian away. Vivian watches the man she loves shatter into unfixable pieces. This is the tragic truth of vengeance. It is always a debt paid in the blood of the people we cherish most. Picture the wreckage, you and I standing in the middle of the devastation. The smoke clears, leaving a silence so thick it is hard to breathe. Rachel works the phones. David manages the police, but Vivian is paralyzed. She stands in the ruined foyer, crushed by a heavy realization. Her father pulled the strings of this massacre, and an innocent boy paid the price. She stumbles to the driveway, finding Lucian staring into the endless dark, his hands stained a terrible red. When she tries to shoulder the blame, he looks right through her, hollow. He mutters that his brother caught a bullet solely because he made the mistake of answering. His ironclad control evaporates into the night air. It forces us to confront a terrifying reality. Opening your heart gives the world a perfect target to aim at. The air between them drops to 0. The camera captures the terrifying shift in Lucian's posture. He snaps away, turning with a bitter venom she has never witnessed. He spits the words like poison, saying he should have left her where he found her. Vivian recoils as he lets out a hollow laugh. He hurls the brutal truth at her feet. His brother is bleeding out, his sanctuary is destroyed, and a target is on his family. All because she poked the bear. She weeps, protesting it is not fair. He delivers the tragic fact of his world. Life is a brutal war, and the innocent are the first casualties. He blames her for bringing this curse to his door, his voice dropping to a terrifying whisper. He orders her out, severing their connection. When you seek retribution, the unforgiving universe balances the scales by taking away what you love most. His shout echoes across the driveway, drawing Rachel from the blood-stained house. Vivian stares at the man who burned his world to the ground to protect her. Now, his eyes hold only freezing hatred. She whispers a broken apology into the night. He cuts her down without hesitation. An apology does not breathe life into a corpse. Defeated, she drags herself to the SUV, where Jin sits like a stone statue. Behind her, Lucian is barking lethal orders into the shadows. The vulnerable man she loved is dead, replaced by a boss hunting for flesh. Jin drops her at a silent hotel with nothing but a room key, vanishing into the fog. Facing the mirror in her ruined clothes, Vivian realizes she is entirely empty. We all learn this painful truth eventually. Winning a war often requires sacrificing every piece of your soul along the way. Let us pause and examine this nightmare together. The camera pushes in on Vivian, drowning in the realization that her father orchestrated this massacre, leaving an innocent kid to bleed out. Sitting in the stifling dark, her phone illuminates her pale face with a chilling text. There is no caller ID, just a venomous threat demanding she return before more bodies are added to the tally. Her father treats human lives as disposable chess pieces. Logic dictates she involve the authorities, but she refuses to let another bullet find someone she loves. With shaking hands, she types a single word, "Where?" The response is immediate. The Peninsula Hotel, 1 hour, come alone. Life constantly forces us to face these brutal crossroads. We quickly discover that genuine devotion requires walking entirely alone into a raging fire, so the people you love never have to feel the flames. The camera lingers in the shadows as Vivian strips away her bloody suit. She pulls on dark denim, shivering in the quiet dark. In the unforgiving mirror, the terrified runaway bride is finally pronounced dead. She has danced with monsters, burning their empires to ash, and her running ends here. Slipping into a car, she watches the city neon bleed across the glass like a fever dream. Her phone buzzes with a text from Jin. Even buried in grief, Lucian reaches out to protect her. She ignores the screen, eyes locked on the looming Peninsula Hotel, a towering monument to greed. We all must learn this brutal lesson. Real strength is forged in that exact, agonizing second when you finally stop fleeing. Plant your feet and stare your darkest nightmare right in the eye. The Peninsula is a gilded cage where blood money flows freely over crystal glasses of scotch. Vivian marches across the glittering marble, wearing a mask of total confidence. Her chest tightens when the private elevator demands a key. A tailored soldier steps from the shadows, swiping his card without a word. The agonizing ascent feels like a slow march to the gallows. She closes her eyes, anchoring her soul to the people she loves. The heavy brass doors part. Her father waits with a drink. Beside him stands Antonio, and lurking behind them is Marcus Chen, the architect of her suffering. The truth about humankind is remarkably simple. It is never the absence of fear, but the terrifying act of forcing your trembling legs to walk into the fire anyway. Let us look at this tragic family dynamic together. Vivian holds a flawless poker face. Richard offers a hollow grin, suggesting she ruins everything she touches. She fires back, asking if he means surviving betrayal or exposing his empire of filth. He looks tired now, the weight of his sins dragging at his bones, yet he still twists the knife of guilt. Then, Antonio steps from the gloom. His voice is smooth as he mentions Ethan suffered a terrible accident tonight. The air leaves the room. Vivian stares him down, accusing him of ordering the hit. Antonio just smiles, whispering that the city breaks those who cross the wrong men. Never forget this dark lesson. Toxic people will always manipulate the narrative, twisting your desperate boundaries to look like an unforgivable crime. Vivian spits venom at him, but Marcus steps forward. His dead eyes lock onto hers, reminding her she is only breathing because they have a deal to make. Her father then drops the final hammer. She must weep for the cameras, play the hysterical daughter, pin the bloodshed on Lucian, and let their crooked merger pass. If she becomes their puppet, her chosen family lives. They are weaponizing her bleeding heart. She screams she will never return to Damien. Her father simply chuckles, a sound dry as dust. He reveals Damien is already ruined, discarded because the boy outlived his purpose. It is a chilling portrait of pure greed. In the pursuit of raw power, loyalty is a pathetic illusion. The very second you stop being useful to a monster, you are thrown straight to the starving wolves. The penthouse hums with the ugly energy of desperate men. Federal agents are circling, and the media is gorging on their corruption. Her father steps close, demanding she extinguish the fire she started. Vivian looks through his hollow soul, whispering that they belong in the flames. But he knows how to corner his daughter, twisting her love into a weapon. Just as his manipulation threatens to snap her spirit, her phone vibrates. A quiet message from Jin glows on the screen. Ethan survived the surgery. A violent rush of relief nearly drops her to her knees. Keep this profound truth close to your heart. Toxic people will always try to turn your deep empathy into a suffocating trap, but you must never allow their darkness to strip away your beautiful humanity. Slipping the phone away, a spark of defiance ignites darkness inside Vivian. The camera catches the sharp shift in her posture. She flips their narrative, declaring she is walking out that door to hand them to the authorities. Antonio laughs, mocking her leaked files as useless smoke. Vivian snaps back that Ethan will take the stand. Her father ruthlessly crushes that hope, stating no jury will believe a convicted felon over wealthy men in tailored suits. They will simply feed the press a tragic tale of an unstable bride losing her grip on reality. You and I must recognize this deeply sinister tactic together. When dangerous men are finally backed into a corner, they never offer apologies. They simply rewrite history to make you look like the crazy one. Marcus blocks the doorway, his massive frame stealing the oxygen from the room. Vivian feels her pulse hammering. She forgot her father spent decades rigging these bloody games. Desperate, she asks for time. Antonio responds with a cold countdown of 60 seconds. If she refuses to kneel, her chosen family will bleed. She whispers they would never dare. Antonio leans in, reminding her they just put a bullet in Ethan. They have no moral lines left to cross. The room begins to spin. Suddenly, her screen flashes with a warning from an unknown number. She is being recorded, and she must run now. The lesson here is vital. Never underestimate the deadly traps of a ruthless manipulator, and always be prepared to break away when the pressure reaches its absolute peak. The camera focuses on Vivian as her blood turns to ice. Her eyes catch the glint of a recording device on the bookshelf. Her father demands she trade her dignity for her friends. She looks at the man who raised her, finally seeing the monster beneath the suit. A terrifying calm washes over her. She whispers that her choice is made. He smiles, convinced he has won. Instead, she tells him to rot in hell, launching her phone straight through the plate glass window. The glass shatters like thunder. Marcus lunges, but she drops low, swinging a solid brass lamp into his knee to break his balance. Stick with me on this one. Life teaches us a violent truth. When a corrupted game is entirely rigged against you, your only real survival tactic is to completely flip the board. Chaos erupts as guards surge forward. Vivian throws her trembling weight against the elevator panel. The metal doors slide open, framing Jin. He stands perfectly still, his weapon raised, his eyes devoid of fear. He drags her inside just as gunshots shatter the plaster where her head had been. As the doors seal them in, Vivian struggles for air, asking how he tracked her. The truth is simple. Lucian never let her walk into the fire alone. He commanded Jin to shadow her every step. They sprint through narrow service corridors, breaking out into a dark alley where a car waits. The tires scream as they vanish into the night. Here is a powerful truth. True loyalty is never about empty promises. It is about knowing exactly who will show up for you when the trap finally snaps shut. The camera finds Vivienne in the escaping car, her chest rising in ragged gasps. She whispers a question about their destination. Catching her reflection, Jin delivers a steady truth. The boss never abandons his own, even when his temper burns hot. They weave a frantic path through the city, arriving at a safe house. Inside, the air is heavy. Rachel demands to know why Vivian faced her family alone. Vivian tearfully insists she wanted to shield them from the fallout. David steps forward with a bitter reality. The enemy merely used her isolation to break her spirit. This brings us to a devastating life lesson. When you insist on carrying the massive weight of the world entirely on your shoulders, you inevitably crush the very people trying to help you hold it up. Collapses into the leather cushions, completely emptied of fight, she reveals the devastating truth. Her father promised to slaughter everyone she loves, offering Ethan as proof of his resolve. The lawyers paced the floor in a panic. It is textbook intimidation, but without hard evidence, the authorities will do nothing. Vivian drops her face into her hands, confessing she only managed to shatter a window and run. Then, from the shadows, Jin steps into the light. He holds up a tiny recording device. He had slipped a microphone into her coat before she ever arrived at the penthouse. Every single threat was captured. This moment offers us a profound piece of wisdom. Always build a hidden safety net for yourself, because a cornered, desperate enemy will never fight with honor. Marcus offers a grim smile, calling the audio undeniable proof. Rachel starts typing emails to the bureau. Suddenly, a dangerous voice brings the room to a halt. Lucian stands in the doorway. He still wears his bloody shirt, looking like a phantom returning from the grave. He demands the audio. For 30 suffocating seconds, he stands in deathless silence, listening to his enemies threaten the woman he loves. All warmth vanishes from his posture, replaced by a terrifying, frozen wrath. He commands his people to release the files to every news outlet at once. He wants their empire destroyed by dawn. Let us end this chapter together with a brutal lesson. When ruthless people push you to the edge, sometimes the only valid response is to burn their empire to the ground. Let us step into this shattered room together, you and I. The perimeter is locked, but the emotional ruin is absolute too. The camera pushes in on Lucian. The gentle man from hours ago is gone, replaced by a stranger trembling with icy panic. His perfect composure shatters as he yells at Vivian for walking blindly into a lethal trap. She whispers her defense, desperate to shield them from more blood, but he refuses to yield. He reminds her they are hunting butchers who nearly slaughtered his brother. The blinding terror of almost losing her has stripped him down to raw nerve. It is a bitter truth we must face. You cannot heal the world alone, and playing the solitary martyr only inflicts the most permanent scars on the souls who actually love you. The room sinks into a leaden silence. Vivian breathes Ethan's name, and the fire instantly drains from Lucian. His shoulders collapse under a crushing, invisible weight as he whispers that his brother barely survived the operating room. Vivian's voice cracks with a fragile apology, but Lucian shakes his head, his armor completely gone. He confesses that watching her court death is tearing his soul apart, yet Vivian anchors her feet, demanding he stop treating her like spun glass. She survived her father, and she will survive this war. Lucian desperately asks how much more blood must spill before she accepts her own mortality. Trauma builds towering iron walls, but true courage is lowering the drawbridge so the people who love you can help carry the heavy load. The air hangs heavy, thick with unresolved pain. Vivian refuses to break eye contact, demanding to know if she is an equal or just a burden to this dangerous man. Lucian crumbles, his voice fracturing in the dim light as he admits she is both, and the contradiction is tearing him in half. The quiet truth remains. You cannot demand trust while shielding a lover from every sharp edge. Suddenly, the fragile standoff shatters. Marcus storms into the frame, clutching the cracked ledgers like a damning script. 3 years ago, right before Ethan was framed, her father wired $50,000 to the lead detective. It is a tragic betrayal, rotting the very foundation to dust. Watch the shadows closely, because the final bloody puzzle pieces are violently snapping into place. Framing $50,000 as a consulting fee is a bitter joke. The detective escaped to the islands just 6 months after the trial, draining a phantom account. Ever since, he traded his badge to slaughter an innocent man's future. The lesson is absolute. The truth always leaves a paper trail, no matter how much dirt you shovel over the grave. Rachel asks if they can force a confession, but Lucian coldly kills the hope. Men who auction their souls do not break. Yet, the brutal poetry of this moment is that words are useless now. Marcus projects the banking logs onto the wall, casting a harsh light across their tired faces. No theatrical courtroom tears are needed anymore. They possess the cold, undeniable financial math to burn this syndicate to the ground. Stick with me, because we are about to witness the exact frame a man plunges into the abyss. Victory feels close until Jin takes a call and the color violently drains from his face. 3 assassins just tried to breach Ethan's hospital room. Never underestimate a cornered beast, for that is when the claws come out. The camera lingers on Lucian. All warmth dies in his eyes, replaced by the freezing calm of a blood-eater. He barks commands, locking down the floor and firing the evidence to federal agents. But a tragic hero never waits for the slow gears of justice. He bolts for the heavy steel doors. Vivian watches him move, a sickening knot twisting in her stomach as the terrifying reality sets in. Lucian is trading the clean courtroom for a bloody blade. Stepping off the edge, Lucian turns slowly, his face carved from unyielding ice. His voice drops to a terrifying whisper, vowing to permanently erase Antonio and her father from the earth. Vivian's scream echoes off the cold concrete, begging him to see this is not justice, only raw vengeance. But the tragic flaw has taken root. They shot his brother, and he is done kneeling to a broken system. It is a bitter lesson. Revenge is a blinding poison that dissolves the fragile border between hero and villain. He coldly states he does not need her blessing to kill, then vanishes into the dark parking garage. Vivian sprints into the shadows, her fingers clawing at his rigid arm for one desperate warning. If he fires that weapon tonight, he transforms into the exact soulless monster he spent his life trying to destroy. Lucian stops, his dead eyes locking onto hers. He delivers a crushing admission. He is already a killer, and love will never wash the old blood from his hands. Vivian meets his darkness with fire, insisting his urge to protect his family. Proves his goodness. Here is the lesson. Your past does not dictate your soul, but your next choice might. Tragically, Lucian is deaf to her grace. He rips arm free, declaring that since they drew first blood, he is crossing the line. He throws open the black SUV door, ready to plunge into the night alone. But Vivian is an undeniable force. She dives straight into the passenger seat. He roars at her to get out, but she simply stares him down with unbreakable resolve, riding shotgun into the chaos. The tension inside the vehicle is a ticking powder keg. Vivian refuses to let Lucian burn his soul to ash alone, commanding Jin to drive. Lucian shoots her a fractured look, his face painted by streetlights, caught between blind fury and a desperate hope. He yields, demanding she stay locked inside. They tear through the dark streets, while Lucian barks rapid Korean into his phone, orchestrating a strike. He reveals the targets are in a heavily secured penthouse. Vivian warns it is an obvious trap, but he simply chambers a round into his weapon with a chilling click. The enemy made a fatal mistake targeting his family. Here is a powerful lesson. Never underestimate the cold, violent patience of someone fighting to protect the people they love. Lucian is finished playing the polished savior. He tried walking in the sun, but tragedy always drags him back to the shadows. He leads Vivian down a dead concrete hallway, unlocking a heavy steel door to a hidden command center. The freezing blue light of surveillance monitors washes over a table covered in heavy weaponry. Vivian forgets how to breathe. Lucian stares at her, his voice entirely drained of humanity. He declares this is the real him, asking if she still believes his soul can be salvaged. Before heartbreak can even register in her eyes, a deafening siren rips through the silence. You and I both know the harsh reality. The sharpest suits hide the bloodiest secrets. Never assume you know a man just because he wears a polite smile in the daylight. The blue monitor light reflects in Lucian's eyes as his face hardens into pure stone. The screens show Antonio's hit squad in heavy vans, speeding toward the hospital where Ethan lies helpless. But Lucian has waited in the dark for this fatal misstep. Grabbing the radio, his voice is chillingly calm as he orders his men to close the trap. He overrides police frequencies, cashing in every dark favor he owns in the city. Vivian watches in breathless awe as he conducts a violent symphony of defense. Flashing sirens and private security suddenly swarm the digital intersection, trapping the assassins miles from his brother. The lesson is profound. Your alliances are your ultimate armor. Build strong bonds while the water is calm, because you will desperately need them when the storm breaks. The feeds frame a scene from a bloody nightmare. Antonio's men try to break the trap, but the perimeter is sealed. Silent flashes of gunfire illuminate the monitors, painting the room in violent white light. Vivian stands paralyzed, watching the choreography of death from afar. 90 seconds later, the street goes perfectly still. Lucian answers a phone, his voice a hollow void. He orders the bodies processed, demanding names by dawn. Miles away, Antonio is realizing his kingdom has fallen. Vivian's blood runs hot, ready to march into the fire and end this herself. But Lucian blocks the heavy steel door, refusing to let her die for a reckless impulse. Sometimes holding your ground is the truest courage. Never let your own boiling rage march you blindfolded into an open grave. Lucian holds her gaze, the dim light catching the ruin in his eyes. He tells her to just keep breathing while he burns his world to ash. But Vivian refuses to be a silent extra in her own tragedy. She steps into his space, warning that if he pulls the trigger, he will rot in a cell forever. Lucian's voice drops to a whisper, admitting her safety is worth the price of his soul. It is a devastating confession, yet Vivian moves closer. She did not claw out of the dark just to watch him drown alone. She demands to stand by his side as an equal, and you can almost see the ice around his heart fracture. We all need to remember this. True loyalty is never about blind support. It is about grabbing the people you love by the shoulders and dragging them back from the bitter edge. The silence stretches, heavier than the steel walls around them. Lucian reaches out, his fingers trembling as they brush her cheek. "You are out of your mind," he whispers, his voice thick with sorrow. She refuses to look away, softly replying that he is, too. She pleads with him. They can end this the right way without spilling more blood. Lucian's jaw tightens, the brutal internal war written across his face. He asks how he can let the men who hurt her keep breathing. She tells him real justice does not need a single bullet. In that fragile second, the beast inside him yields. He picks up the phone to call the authorities, surrendering his violent revenge. Retaliation might offer a quick high, but the absolute greatest victory is always walking away with a clean soul. The receiver clatters against the concrete, leaving a suffocating silence. Stick with me here. Desperate men rarely wait for the sirens. We watch Vivian march toward the iron table, the harsh light casting deep shadows as she grabs a stun weapon. Lucian tries to ground her. He warns her it carries 50,000 volts, asking if she is ready to cross that dark threshold. She answers by strapping a heavy vest over her chest. The door suddenly flies open. A lieutenant bursts in, breathless. The security feeds show a frantic figure sprinting through the wet alleys. It is Richard. Her own father is abandoning ship to save his skin, prompting Lucian to bolt for the exit. You can sprint away from your worst mistakes for years, but the truth is always waiting quietly at your back door. Tires scream as their sedan tears out of the garage. Vivian stares at the glowing screen, her heart hammering like a trapped bird. Lucian notes he is heading for the marina, his voice eerily calm. It is the classic exit strategy for men suffocating under dirty money. They reach the desolate docks just as freezing rain begins to fall. Vivian spots him instantly. Richard is sprinting toward a luxury yacht, his face twisted with terror. She screams his name into the heavy night, and he freezes. When he turns, his eyes are pathetic, begging them to run before the syndicate destroys them all. Lucian steps forward, blocking the path to the water as sirens wail in the distance. Stolen money might buy a shiny boat, but it will never buy an escape from your own shadow. Richard spins one last lie, insisting he is only running to draw the violence away from her. The manipulation is agonizing to watch. Vivian stands in the downpour, trembling as years of buried rage boil over. She screams at him, her voice cracking over the crashing waves. She declares he lost the right to be her father the night he traded her safety for a mobster's favor. Every selfish choice he ever made, she lays bare on the wet pier. She was never a daughter to him, only a pawn. Stripped of his hollow excuses, the polished businessman vanishes entirely. All that remains is a broken old man choking on his own bitter tears. Here is a hard truth. A bloodline is just simple biology. True family is built on protection, and no one gets a free pass to hurt you just because they gave you your name. He babbles into the storm, desperate to explain how the corrupt merger was meant to fix his mistakes. He falls to his knees, swearing Antonio threatened her life. Vivian just lets out a broken, hollow laugh. Trading your child to a monster is not protection, it is the ultimate cowardice. Suddenly, flashing red and blue lights paint the wet docks. The authorities have arrived. Panic flashes in Richard's eyes as he reaches into his coat. Lucian draws his weapon in a heartbeat. Richard begs him not to shoot, pulling out a thick, sealed envelope. He claims it holds the hidden bank routes Antonio never knew about. He holds it out to Vivian like a fragile offering, telling her to burn the mobster to the ground. It is never too late to offer a piece of redemption, even if you never get to sit in its shade. The tragic irony of this scene is heavy. Richard whispers for Lucian to protect his daughter, then turns and sprints toward the dark water. He is still choosing his own escape over the broken child standing right in front of him. Lucian shouts a warning, but Vivian stands entirely frozen on the pier. Federal agents swarm the area, weapons sweeping the docks. Richard thinks he can make it to the edge. Suddenly, the blinding searchlights of a Coast Guard vessel cut through the fog. A booming megaphone echoes over the waves, telling him it is over. They drag him back up the ramp in cold steel cuffs, his shoulders slumped in defeat. You can try to outrun the ghosts of your past, but the ocean of your mistakes will always wash you right back to shore. The bill for betrayal always comes due. As the agents march him up the slick planks, Rich stops near the daughter he broke. He offers one last fragile apology. You can see the agonizing conflict in Vivian's eyes. She wants to scream, to demand back every year he traded for dirty money. Instead, she gives him the most painful punishment of all, absolute silence. When they lock him in the transport vehicle, the adrenaline finally leaves her bones. She crushes the envelope against her chest, struggling to breathe. Lucian steps close, his hand gently grounding her shoulder. The war is over, and the men who hunted them are going away in chains. Yet standing in the freezing rain, the victory feels exactly like ashes. Cutting toxic roots out of your life will save you, but you still have to learn to live with the empty space they leave behind. Instead of relief, Vivian feels hollow. She and Lucian drive into the night, desperate to see Ethan. The hospital is a fortress, guarded by agents pacing the sterile halls. Ethan looks rough, hooked up to a dozen machines, but his eyes are open. Mrs. Kwan sits beside the bed, fiercely holding his hand. The second Ethan sees Lucian, he cracks a weak smile, joking about sleeping through an entire war. Lucian freezes, relents. He stares at his brother like he is looking at a ghost, before stepping forward and gripping his shoulder with gentle desperation. We often forget how fragile these ties are. You never truly realize how much you value someone until the universe threatens to take them away forever. Cutting through the heavy emotion, Ethan looks at Vivian and asks if they finally took the bosses down. The sterile hospital lights hum above as Vivian delivers the heavy truth. Her father, Antonio, and Marcus are finally locked in federal holding. The elaborate frame job has unraveled, wiping Ethan's name clean. Watch Ethan postures the moment Lucian confirms his restored reputation. 3 agonizing years of suffocating weight physically break him. He collapses into violent, grateful tears. Vivian watches this raw release from the shadows. Tonight, she traded a toxic bloodline for a chosen family. The people who bleed for you are your true kin. That is a lesson you carry forever. But just as the tension breaks, a harsh electronic shriek violently shatters the ward. Code blue. Red emergency lights begin to pulse down the white corridor. A cruel, flashing warning that this brutal underworld war is far from its final act. The atmosphere violently snaps. Medics sprint past the lens, screaming about a live bomb threat. The entire floor is ordered to evacuate. In a fraction of a second, The soft relief in Lucian S. eyes hardens into cold, absolute terror. He knows this is Antonio S. desperate endgame. Panicked nurses roughly throw Ethan onto a gurney, rushing toward the concrete stairwell. The scene is pure chaos. A stampede of terrified patients choking the hallway. Vivian clings to Lucian S. side, swallowed by the panic. But as they hit the heavy fire doors, she catches a terrifying detail in the harsh fluorescent glare. Marcus Chen, the hitman, is dressed in faded scrubs, his weapon aimed dead at Ethan S. chest. Desperate men with nothing to lose always take the most fatal shots. You can never turn your back until the monster is completely buried. Vivian S. scream cuts straight through the blaring alarms. Marcus raises his weapon, but Lucien moves with predatory speed, violently shoving her behind him while drawing his own gun. The crowd scatters like broken glass. A deafening gunshot shatters the hallway. But watch the frame closely. The bullet does not come from Marcus. Jin steps out from the swirling smoke, landing a clean shot in the assassin's shoulder. Marcus hits the linoleum hard, instantly buried by guards. Lucien aims down at the bleeding hitman, his expression utterly hollow, yet Marcus only spits a bloody laugh, whispering that Antonio S. war will not stop until the earth takes them all. The bomb was a ghost designed to create a killing floor. To defeat true evil, you must be prepared to sever every single root. The most dangerous villains never surrender quietly. Guards drag Marcus into the shadows, leaving a dark streak of blood across the white tiles. Federal agents swarm the frame, clearing the ward with harsh military precision. The bomb was a beautifully sick trick to isolate Ethan, and it nearly succeeded. Notice how Vivian slumps against the freezing plaster, her chest heaving as the weight of this tragedy settles. Just 4 mornings ago, she was weeping in a torn wedding gown. Tonight, she is dodging bullets in a crime scene. Life pivots in the blink of an eye. You can never predict where your loyalties will drag you, so you must learn to breathe inside the fire. In the background, Lucien paces like a caged wolf, barking security orders into his phone. Meanwhile, Ethan lies pale upon the gurney, coughing out dark jokes just to keep the sheer terror at bay. The metal doors lock as Ethan is wheeled into a secure room. He lets out a breathless laugh, noting they tried to end his life twice in 24 hours. Lucien barks that it is not a joke, but listen closely to the crack in his baritone voice. It is the trembling, fragile relief of a brother staring at a survivor. Once guarded, Lucien pulls Vivian into a dim, empty conference room. The shadows highlight the deep, bruising exhaustion carved into his jawline. He is a man burning his final drop of fuel. He leans close, revealing the terrifying truth. Marcus had inside help. Someone bypassed security to hand him those scrubs. If you ever believe severing a snake's head stops the bite, you are painfully mistaken. The venomous nerves still twitch. Antonio S. hidden pawns are still moving across the board, silently waiting for the perfect kill. Let us pause and unpack this terrifying climax together. Antonio realizes his empire is crumbling, so he has chosen to burn the earth and slaughter the witnesses. The camera pushes in on Vivian as she begs for a safe strategy, but watch the light completely die in Lucian's eyes. His voice drops to a hollow, lifeless whisper, declaring the absolute death of mercy. When Vivian desperately pleads for him to trust the law, he sneers, reminding her those same courts nearly buried his brother. He plans to breach federal holding and execute her father with his own hands. She panics, calling it suicide. Lucien just leans in, breathing 2 chilling words. Watch me. The profound tragedy here is unsettling. When society's bright rules fail to protect the innocent, the pull of the dark becomes magnetic. To save your blood, You will gladly become the monster. Tears streak Vivian S.'s face as she begs Lucian not to throw his redemption into the fire. She demands to know how rotting in a concrete cell saves anyone. But Lucian is drifting entirely into the shadows. He replies, with a hauntingly soft cadence, that it will finally let him sleep. She grips his arm, reminding him he bled to escape this mafia life 3 years ago. He gently removes her hand, leaning close to whisper that he is no longer angry, he is purely homicidal. He sharply orders her to step back, claiming she has absolutely no right to manage how he protects his own blood. The rejection strikes her like a physical blow. You can see her posture collapse, absorbing the guilt of bringing this war to his doorstep. But hear this truth. Taking the blame for a storm you did not create is a fatal trap. You cannot save the people you love by crucifying yourself. Vivian physically spirals, her breathing shallow as she tallies the gruesome cost. Ethan shot, Mrs. Kwan brutally beaten, Lucian preparing to burn his own soul. In her mind, she is the architect of this expanding graveyard. But the heavy silence is broken by Lucian's dark, breathless laugh. The tension shifts. He steps into her space, his towering frame softening as he shatters her guilt. He murmurs that she is not the disease. She is the cure. Without her defiance, his brother would be rotting in a cell, and Antonio would still be pulling the strings. He raises his bruised hands, gently framing her tear-stained face, reminding her that killing a dynasty always demands a heavy toll. Doing the righteous thing is meant to bleed. When you raise a sword against a monster, expect the venom to splash. Enduring that poison is your absolute greatest victory. Her voice breaks as she asks how anyone survives a war with no visible horizon. The harsh angles of Lucian's face melt in the dim light. He tells her you simply find a single thing worth protecting, and you hold on until your knuckles bleed. When she quietly asks what he is holding on to, he traces the curve of her cheekbone and breathes one word, you. It is a moment of profound, tragic romance until the sharp vibration of his phone violently shatters the peace. It is Rachel. Watch the terrifying shift. Lucian turns from an exhausted lover back into a cold-blooded boss in a single blink. He relays the grim truth. Antonio was just found hanging inside his maximum security cell. The lesson here is written in blood. Never lower your weapon when a predator is cornered. The exact moment you assume the psychological game is over, the monster plays its most chaotic hand. The static clears as Rachel confirms her father survived the attempt. Lucian's brilliant, cynical mind instantly dissects the scene. He questions the physics, noting the makeshift rope was suspiciously weak. Vivian then drops a theory that chills the blood in their veins. What if this entire gruesome display is just theater? Antonio is a masterful conductor of chaos, a man that proud does not quietly bow out. He deliberately pulled the federal spotlight onto his own bleeding neck, giving his loyalists the cover of darkness to execute the real strike. Lucian immediately radios his guards, ordering them to barricade Ethan's door, even if the hospital burns to ash. The lesson here should scare you. When a narcissistic manipulator suddenly plays the tragic victim, aggressively check your blind spots. They will gladly stage their own demise to lure you into the grave. Let us look at this beautiful, bloody chessboard together, shall we? Vivian desperately scans the pieces. Her father is bleeding in a maximum security cell, while Marcus is chained to a hospital frame. Every known demon is caged, but Lucian understands the terrifying psychology of the Mafia. Antonio is not trying to escape his punishment. He is sending a deafening message to the underworld. By attempting to take his own life, he chose absolute silence over a federal plea deal. He is shielding the untouchable elites who fund the syndicate. If he dies, the real billionaires walk away spotless. Rachel S. voice over the speaker confirms the bleak reality. Corporate lawyers will stall this trial for decades. This is a bitter life lesson. The golden scales of justice are heavily rigged. The true architects of suffering always hide quietly behind the bleeding fall guy. The temperature in the sterile room violently plummets. Lucian S.'s voice drops into a hollow, dead baritone, demanding just 5 minutes alone in Antonio S.'s cell. Rachel fiercely pushes back through the phone, reminding him the man is surrounded by federal rifles. But look at Lucian S.'s hands. He is entirely consumed by the intoxicating cycle of violence, his fingers trembling over the cold steel hidden in his coat. The psychological torture here is deeply cinematic. The monster who just tried to slaughter his brother is the very same father figure who shielded him as a boy. After watching his family bleed for so long, Lucian has slipped the leash, completely deaf to logic. This is the tragic climax of trauma. Handing the wheel over to your unresolved pain might make you feel like a god, but blind vengeance will only torch the exact sanctuary you sacrificed everything to build. Luca shoves toward the exit, his voice flat and dead. Vivian scrambles behind him, her physics hooking into his sleeve like a lifeline. Under the harsh fluorescent glare, she drops a heavy truth. If he crosses this violent line, he becomes the exact monster society claims he is. Slowly, Luca turns. His eyes are two black stones, completely devoid of light. He softly confesses he was always that monster, and she merely chose to keep her eyes tightly shut. He pulls away as the heavy steel doors slam shut, swallowing him and leaving her shattered on the cold linoleum. She truly believed her love could be a beacon. But the lesson bleeding through this tragic scene is absolute. You cannot love the shadows out of a human soul that has already built a permanent home in the dark. The tension in the room is thick enough to choke on. Vivian tells Rachel that justice is a luxury for those who have never spent a night dodging bullets. Suddenly, a ringing phone shatters the silence. Rachel answers. The color draining from her face, Vivian S.'s father is folding. He is begging for an immunity deal, ready to tear down Antonio's empire with ledgers and bitter truths. Rachel smiles, realizing they can win this war with legal paper instead of bloody knuckles. But a massive problem looms. Luca does not know. He is stalking the dark prison halls, seconds away from throwing his freedom away for a single kill. Vivian screams to pull him out. The lesson here is timeless. Patience is a true superpower. Rushing blindly into the fire of vengeance will often destroy the victory you just secured. Stick with me because the pulse of this tragedy is pounding. Vivian bulldozes through security, sprinting down the echoing concrete corridor. She finds Luca locked in an agonizing standoff, the cold steel weapon trembling in his grip. You can see the psychological tear in his posture, caught between a ghost and the monster Antonio became. Breathless, she grabs his arm and drops the bombshell. Her father is singing to the feds, bringing the corrupt syndicate crashing down. She locks onto Luca's dark eyes, whispering that they won, but only if he walks away right now. It is a heavy realization that shatters the cycle of violence. The powerful lesson here, sometimes the sweetest revenge is not bloodying your own hands. It is stepping back and letting the system devour your enemies. Rachel reads the hit list, its staggering scope hanging heavy in the air. Richard S. and Confession will sink 7 syndicate players, including untouchable politicians. You can physically watch the violent storm drain out of Luca's rigid posture. The adrenaline fades, leaving behind a bone-deep exhaustion. He will not get his hands on Antonio, But walking out of this building, a free man, is the ultimate triumph. The empire is dead. Then, Vivian's voice breaks the quiet as she asks the hardest question. What happens to the man who raised her? The answer is witness protection. Her father becomes a phantom. The lesson, hiding in this bitter resolution, is profound. True victory is rarely about proudly standing over the bloody ruins of your enemy. Sometimes the greatest triumph is simply knowing when to walk away. They give her 15 minutes, and the silence in that concrete room is suffocating. Richard, who once bent the city to his will, now looks fragile, chained to a cold steel table. When he tries to stand, a guard forces him down. Vivian stares at him, wondering if the loving father she knew was ever real. Suddenly, Richard breaks. He sobs, begging for forgiveness, admitting he threw Ethan to the wolves just to save his own skin. But Vivian refuses to soften. She looks right through his tears and delivers a piercing question. Is he actually sorry for the pain he caused, or just terrified because he finally got caught? He shamefully whispers that it is probably both. The brutal lesson here cannot be ignored. An apology lacking genuine accountability is nothing more than a desperate man trying to purchase his peace. The camera pulls in as the scene turns darker. Richard confesses Antonio had him completely trapped, holding the damning ledgers of his dirty finances. This was the heavy chain used to force him into freeing from Ethan. For 3 long years, Richard quietly paid blood money, while his daughter's life burned. Vivian, her voice trembling, asks if her engagement to Damien was ever real. Richard shatters her last illusion, admitting it was a cold corporate merger. He traded his own flesh and blood to secure power, looking the other way while Damien betrayed her. The scale of this betrayal hangs heavy in the air. Here is a lesson we simply cannot ignore. Secrets are the heaviest, most expensive debt you can ever take on. You might hide them for a while, but eventually they will bankrupt your soul. Tears pour down Richard's face, carving deep lines into his defeated facade. He admits he was drowning in corruption, believing the criminal empire mattered more than his own flesh and blood. He finally owns his failure as a father. The camera finds Vivian showing she has no anger left. She is completely hollowed out. She stares at this broken man and tells him, in a chillingly calm voice, that she does not forgive him. She hopes burning down the network helps him sleep in whatever lonely cell he ends up in. As she turns, Richard screams that he loves her. The desperate words echo off the cold cinderblock walls, heavy and empty. The hardest lesson to learn in life rests right here. Forgiveness is a personal choice, not a mandatory transaction. You owe absolutely nothing to the people who broke you. Vivian pauses at the heavy steel door. Without turning around, she delivers the final blow. She softly says she knows he loves her, and that is exactly why the betrayal cuts so deeply. Then, she walks out, leaving him to his ghosts. The story jumps forward, and the next 3 weeks are pure chaos. Richard sings to the authorities, and the shockwaves tear the city apart. Antonio's empire crumbles under a mountain of charges. Marcus flips, and Damien is publicly destroyed by his own family. When her sister calls, Vivian watches the screen, letting the phone ring into the void. She is done with their poison. The lesson shining through this wreckage is beautifully painful. The truth will often come through and destroy everything you thought you knew. But a total collapse clears the ground for a real life. Let us take a breath, you and I, because the smoke is finally clearing. Vivian watches her phone glow and lets it fade to black. Luca has not pushed her. He has remained a quiet, steady anchor. Ethan is healing, heading to law school to fight for those the system tries to bury. Sitting around Mrs. Kwan's warmly lit dinner table, Vivian finally tastes what a chosen family feels like. There is true warmth in this frame, but deep in her soul, a quiet voice whispers that this is not her final destination. She needs to find her own air to breathe. The lesson here is profound. The people who stand by you in the darkest times are a blessing, but you cannot build your entire future inside the shadow of past trauma. Sometimes, to truly heal, you must walk forward completely alone. The dust finally settles, but the silence following a war is always the heaviest burden. It is 2 months after the arrests. Out on the terrace, bathed in pale moonlight, Vivian drops a truth that cuts deeper than any bullet. She has to leave Miami. She needs to find the woman she was before becoming a professional survivor, dodging hitmen and suffocating in toxic family lines. Lucian does not hesitate. He offers to pack a bag, ready to shadow her absolutely anywhere. But Vivian shakes her head. She tells him his crumbling empire needs rebuilding, and Ethan needs him here. The camera lingers on them as a simple truth emerges. You can survive the darkest wars with a loyal crew at your back, but the quiet path of figuring out who you truly are, that is a road you have to walk entirely alone. This is where the emotional armor finally cracks. Vivian looks at him, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, confessing her life has become nothing but a constant reaction to trauma. She just wants to breathe. The muscles in Lucian's jaw tighten as he forces out the question that terrifies him most. What if she never comes back? She holds her ground. Explaining this choice is not about him. It is about making a move not born. From blinding fear, Lucian gives her a sad, quiet smile, admitting she is right even as it visibly breaks his heart. It points to a bitter but beautiful lesson. True love is never about caging someone in your world. It is about holding the door open, even if their freedom takes them away. For 2 whole weeks, they simply live, wandering Miami without the weight of tomorrow. For 14 days, they vanish into the quiet corners of the city. They wander through empty galleries and share meals at a tiny Cuban joint where the owner treats Lucian like an old friend. Vivian teases him, noting that under his cold exterior beats an actual heart. On her final night, Lucian drives her to a deserted beach. There is no neon light, no city noise. Just the dark water and the bite-eating wind. They sit in heavy, cinematic silence until Lucian confesses how much he will miss her, asking once more if she will return. Vivian refuses to lie. She desperately wants to promise, but she holds back. That is a devastating truth we all must learn. Never make a promise you are not entirely sure you can keep. Empty words will always leave a much deeper scar than an honest, painful silence. Let us step into this final aching frame together. The camera lingers on Lucian as he offers a slow, heavy nod, resigning himself to a fragile hope. They sit in silence while the bruised sun bleeds over the horizon, casting long shadows over 2 survivors who dragged each other from the wreckage. Vivian's bags sit by the door. The farewells hang thick in the air. Ethan murmurs that her family here remains unbroken, and Mrs. Kwan presses a warm parcel into her trembling hands. The scene cuts to the airport gate. The world blurs past them in an ignorant rush. She whispers her gratitude, and he thanks her for her trust. Here is the tragic truth. Sometimes, the most brutal part of healing requires the terrifying courage to finally turn your back and walk away. A fractured laugh escapes Vivian as she admits she trusted him when every instinct screamed to run. She turns to leave, but Lucian catches her hand. His voice drops into a desperate gravel, promising that if she ever desires something permanent, he will be waiting. The words catch like glass in her throat. She walks through security, eyes locked dead ahead. knowing a single backward glance will shatter her resolve. The camera dissolves, pulling us through 6 months of exile. The suffocating Miami nights bleed into a sun-drenched hillside in Tuscany. She survived the Parisian rain to finally breathe in the Italian wine country. It brings us to a poetic realization. Sometimes, you must abandon your old world and step blindly into the terrifying unknown to uncover who you are truly meant to be. Vivian isolates herself in a crumbling cottage, punishing her body with the grueling labor of the harvest. The dark soil under her fingernails grounds her mind in ways the Mafia blood never could. Night after night, she bleeds her trauma onto paper until the terrified Miami girl is a phantom. Then the silence shatters. Her phone flares in the dark. It is Lucian. She answers, trading hollow jokes about the quiet of Italy versus the bloody asphalt they left behind. He mentions Ethan is thriving and Mrs. Kwan remains an unstoppable force. But then the dialogue fades, leaving a heavy, loaded pause suffocating the line. The tragic truth is inevitable. Real connections never truly vanish across the miles. They simply wait in the absolute dark for the precise moment to pull you back. Let us examine this pivotal beat, you and I. The syndicate boss is on the line, his voice steeped in dangerous nostalgia. But Vivian S. posture does not waver. She delivers a brutal reality check, her tone stripped of fear. She is finished with the shadows, done dancing on the edge of a knife. Miles away, the camera captures a proud smile pulling at Lucian's mouth. He knows she has finally reclaimed her soul. She longs to be near the people who matter, but refuses to return to Miami. That cursed city's buried under far too many corpses. Staring across the Tuscan valleys, she finds her clarity. Sometimes the ultimate power move is not conquering your enemies. It is possessing the courage to walk away from the venomous environment that broke you. Instead of slipping back into his underworld, Vivian throws a breathtaking curveball. She asks him how he feels about Tuscany. She wants to purchase a rotting, abandoned vineyard. This is no hollow front for laundering blood money. She wants to build something entirely real. Her voice trembles as she describes waking up every morning with zero dread, no target painted on her back. Lucian falls into a deafening silence. Then, his gravelly voice delivers the fatal blow to his old life. Send me the listing details. We cut to 3 months later. Vivian stands in her sun-baked courtyard as a black SUV slowly crunches up the dusty driveway. Here is the unvarnished truth. You cannot heal your wounds in the exact same poisoned soil that broke you. You must bravely leave the dark ruins behind and plant your roots where the light actually reaches you. The frame opens on a catastrophic stretch of overgrown weeds, anchored by a ruined farmhouse. Yet, the lighting tells us this is exactly where the magic lives. The heavy doors of the SUV swing open, and Lucian steps out. He is a jarring cinematic contrast, wearing a razor-sharp suit right in the deep Tuscan mud. Ethan bounds out behind him, flashing a wild grin, while Mrs. Kwan immediately plots her demolition of the rotting beams. Lucian lets out a deep laugh, joking that he abandoned his sanity in Miami to purchase this dirt. But the warmth reaching his dark eyes is devastatingly real. It reminds us of a fundamental law. Starting over is always destined to be a chaotic mess. But when you finally stand alongside the family you chose, even a collapsing pile of broken bricks feels exactly like a palace. The camera tightens as Lucian steps close to Vivian, desperately trying to maintain his icy facade. He sweeps a hand toward the ruined acres, labeling the purchase a corporate expansion. Vivian's expression hardens. She calls his bluff, demanding the agonizing truth of why he crossed an ocean. Here is the raw psychological pivot of our narrative. He locks onto her eyes, letting his heavy armor crash to the floor. He confesses that 6 months of silence forced him to confront the hollow man he was beneath the violence and the suffocating Mafia crown. He simply wants to carve out a quiet life right here with her. As tears trace down her cheeks, a profound lesson bleeds through the frame. True power is never measured by the graveyards you fill. It is found in the agonizing courage to drop your weapons and actively choose peace. Stick with me here, because this is the emotional climax we have been waiting for. We watch this merciless syndicate boss execute enemies with terrifying precision. Yet, now, he stands in dead earth, his voice cracking with vulnerability. He pleads with her to build something clean, no lingering ghosts, no revenge, just them. Vivian sobs, warning him that the soil is unforgiving and they are far too stubborn not to fight. Lucien simply pulls her against his chest. She gazes up at the dangerous phantom who handed her the keys to her own cage and breathes a desperate yes. As their lips meet, the frantic trauma of Miami dissolves into the ground. True love is never found in the dramatic crossfire. It is found in doing the agonizing, quiet work when the smoke clears, building a sanctuary together, heavy brick by heavy brick. The cinematic tension of that kiss is shattered by brilliant reality. Mrs. Kwan screams from the sagging porch that the roof is caving in, while Ethan doubles over in the dirt, laughing. The screen cuts to black, jumping forward 5 years. The transformation is staggering. That cursed mud is now a sprawling, award-winning vineyard. The farmhouse retains its rugged soul, but glows with warmth, hosting village festivals. For years, Vivian was traded on a criminal ledger. But standing in the golden sunlight of her own land, she is reborn as the architect of her fate. The tragic beauty of this story lies right here. You cannot control the toxic cards you were dealt, but you always possess the sovereign power to walk away. Stitch your wounds and build your own empire from the dirt up. The suffocating storm has broken, leaving behind a heavy, golden peace. A brilliant Italian sunrise bleeds over the hills as Vivian walks the rows. The camera catches her calloused hands, stained with earth. She is a complete ghost to the terrified girl on that Miami balcony. Suddenly, the quiet ruptures into joyous chaos. Her 4-year-old daughter, Elena, tears through the dusty vines like a hurricane. Right on her heels is Lucien. The once lethal syndicate boss effortlessly carries their infant son on his broad shoulders, his deep laughter echoing across the valley. He traded his hollow empire for fatherhood. Even Ethan simply let his return ticket expire. The poetry of life proves something vital here. The fiercely loyal souls who shield you during your darkest storms will inevitably forge the family you deserve when the sun finally breaks. Ethan surrendered his hardened edge to this new world. He fell recklessly in love with a fiery local woman named Sophia, trading his violent history for the Mediterranean heat. Now a part-time lawyer and full-time uncle, he watches the kitchen dissolve into domestic poetry. Mrs. Kwan and Sophia battle playfully over pancake batter, shouting in an absurd symphony of Korean and Italian. Ethan leans against the stone, sipping espresso, living for the drama. He shakes his head, declaring the family insane. Vivian fires back, mocking his endless vacation. Laughter rattles the ancient wooden beams, filling Vivian's chest with overwhelming gratitude. Remember this vividly. A perfect life is never sterile or silent. It is spectacularly loud, wonderfully messy, and fiercely guarded by the chaotic people who love you without condition. Let us bring this dark chapter to its close together. The morning coffee cools as Lucien and Vivian step onto their terrace. They traded the bleeding neon of Miami for the endless quiet of the Italian vineyards. Lucian studies her face, asking if the ghosts of their violent past ever call out to her. She does not blink. She misses the ferocious fire it took to survive. But those blood-soaked games are dead, zero regrets. Then Lucian shatters the silence. Antonio Torres is dead. The brutal kingpin, the shot Ethan, died alone in a freezing prison cell. His black heart simply gave out at 63. You and I know exactly how deeply unfair this world can be. But wrap this final truth around your soul. Sometimes, you never even have to raise your fists in anger. Time will quietly fight your absolute hardest battles for you. Vivian looks at Lucian and asks how he feels. You and I would expect a former enforcer to feel a rush of victory, right? But Lucian just lets out a heavy breath. He expected a surge of vindication, but feels only bone-deep exhaustion. The darkest chapter is closed. Vivian looks at him and speaks a profound truth. That heavy exhaustion is exactly what real growth feels like. Down below, their children laugh, tossing pebbles into a fountain. Her voice drops to a whisper. She tells him she never thanked him for stopping on those cathedral steps years ago, for seeing a human being, not just another pawn in a bloody war. He pulls her close, kissing her forehead. True loyalty is never about dramatic rescues. It is about choosing to stay when a person has nothing left to offer you. Lucian holds her gaze, softly admitting she saved him too. He was drowning in his own vengeance, hollowed out by a lifetime of violence. She handed him a lifeline. It is a staggering confession from a man who used to break bones for a living. Their daughter calls out from the grass, and they simply walk to her. No more scanning the shadows for hidden assassins. Later that quiet night, Vivian asks a haunting question. Would the old version of her be happy right now? Lucian answers honestly. He says the old Vivian would be terrified, because letting your guard down is much harder than pulling a trigger. But she would also be incredibly proud. Remember this truth. Anyone can survive a bitter conflict. It takes monumental courage to drop your weapons and build a beautiful life out of the rubble. He takes her hand in the cool night air, telling her that having faith in the goodness of the world takes far more strength than throwing a punch. Vivian squeezes his fingers, smiling as she asks when the enforcer became a philosopher. Probably the day I bought a vineyard without knowing a thing about grapes. He laughs. Down in the valley, old church bells begin to chime. The sound pulls Vivian back to a memory from 5 years ago. She sees herself shattered, sitting in the freezing rain, in a ruined wedding dress after a massive betrayal. She was certain her life was ending on those cold stones. Instead, she fought her way out of the absolute dark. Listen to me closely on this one. Your absolute darkest, most agonizing moment might just be the painful hard reset you desperately need to reclaim your life. The camera slowly descends from an indifferent sky, settling on the quiet hills of Tuscany. A cold wind rustles the grapevines. Vivian stands perfectly still. Notice the subtle drop of her shoulders. The moonlight catches a faint scar on her neck, but her eyes no longer dart toward the shadows. The spilled blood, the betrayals, the ruthless men who tried to break her, they belong to the past now. She's simply breathing. The iron scent of violence has faded into the smell of damp soil. Listen closely, because we all fight our own private wars. We hold on to venom, craving the ruin of those who hurt us. But the absolute greatest revenge in this tragic world, it is finding your own quiet peace, standing in the gentle dark, and making sure your enemies never touch it again. A major lesson from the boardroom confrontation is that truth can destroy systems built on lies. Damien tries to control the narrative by suggesting that Vivian is unstable and emotionally irrational. This is a common tactic in manipulative situations. Instead of addressing wrongdoing, the guilty person attacks the credibility of the victim. Damien wants investors and family members to believe that Vivian's refusal to marry him is a mental health problem rather than a rational response to betrayal. But Vivian defies this job by arriving prepared, calm, and armed with evidence. She exposes the affair, the financial corruption, the offshore accounts, the falsified documents, and the legal weaknesses in the merger agreement. This teaches viewers that the truth becomes powerful when it is organized and documented. Emotional pain is valid, but in a hostile environment, evidence can protect someone from being dismissed. Vivian does not scream or collapse. She speaks clearly, presents facts, and refuses to let others define her reality. Educationally, this is an important message for anyone facing manipulation, workplace injustice, family pressure, or public blame. People who benefit from lies often depend on confusion and emotional chaos. They want the victim to look unstable, so the truth becomes easier to ignore. Vivian T.'s strength comes from preparation. With legal support and documentation, she changes the power dynamic. The story also teaches that calmness does not mean weakness. Sometimes the most powerful form of resistance is speaking the truth, control, and precision. Vivian's boardroom victory shows that manipulation loses power when exposed to light. The lesson is clear: keep recorders, know your rights, seek professional support, and never allow someone else to rewrite your story. The truth may be painful, but it can become the foundation for freedom.